always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shunned podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunnedpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shun podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now let's meet our guest.
Hello, my name is Greg. I am 53 years old. I was a born-in Jehovah's Witness that left when I was about 38 years old. I am now shunned.
Good year to leave. I was 38 as well. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? I know you said you were born in, but like, do you know the history of it at all in your family?
Oh, yes, I sure do. And I'd be happy to share it. My family grew up in your neighborhood, actually. My dad was born and raised in Jeffersonville, Indiana. He was the youngest of 10 kids. Grew up during the Depression, very poor family. His next oldest brother, who was 2 years older than him, my dad kind of idolized him. I mean, they were very, very close, older brother thing. When he was 18, my uncle, that is, he was injured playing football in high school, broke his neck, and was a paraplegic, I believe. I think he still had the use of his arms, but not his legs. He was confined to a wheelchair from that moment forward. And in a small town like Jeffersonville, obviously that must have made big news. They couldn't treat him. I don't think they had the facilities to treat him in Louisville. I think he had to be brought up to Indianapolis for everything that they had to do. And there was no 65 back then. I think this was before Eisenhower's interstate system got implemented. So you had to drive like 31 all the way to Indianapolis. And there was a bunch of back and forth, to get him treated. My grandmother, and I think my dad was probably, involved in all that. So to cut that short, like I said, being that made, I'm sure, big news in Jeffersonville, who came a-courting? Jehovah's Witnesses came a-knocking on the door, selling him his legs back. Letting him know that, you do this, that, and some other thing, God's going to bestow blessings on you. And it didn't take at the time. I'm sure it was wonderful to hear, but he had other plans, other ideas. He and my father, actually all of my uncles, I believe, were very into sports. They played, my uncle couldn't, but my dad, his brothers played in sports leagues. My uncle coached. He got involved in politics. In fact, in Jeffersonville, he was, I think, Justice of the Peace for a number of years in Jeffersonville. But apparently, I'm guessing as he started to age, maybe he became more aware of his mortality. He was still a young man, mind you. And I think it was the same man who came, because I refuse to call them brothers. I won't do that. They're no brothers of mine. The same, and he wasn't even an elder because that arrangement wasn't even in place in the 1960s. I think he just came a-knocking. And I know he did with my dad, because when he married my mother, my brothers and sisters were born. I'm 17 years younger than my oldest brother and 11 years younger than my youngest sister. So I'm also the baby of my family. They had a family before they ever had me. I guess this particular Jehovah's Witness was a-knocking on their door too, to the annoyance of my dad and mom. And it was that typical story of close the drapes, turn the lights out, don't make any noise on Saturday morning. We don't want, this Jehovah's Witness knowing we're home. Once my uncle, though, once he started taking to the faith, as I said, my dad always kind of, I think, put stock in what he did, looked up to him as his older brother. Then he started having a turnaround in thinking about what the whole thing involved and what it meant for him and his family. So and my oldest brother followed suit because I think he kind of was in league. I know he was. He idolized my uncle as well. So they got baptized. My dad and my brother got baptized in 1970. My mom, my sisters, they followed about 3 years later. In between those baptisms, though, was 1971. That was the year I was born. So by the time my whole family was fully indoctrinated and baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses, by the time I was kind of, becoming aware of my surroundings, 5, 6 years old, it was all I ever knew.
And I guess you were too young, but being born in 71, but that's around 1975 too, right? And I don't know if that played into your parents and maybe they felt pressure to get in while the getting was good, so to speak, before the end of the world, supposedly.
That could very well be. I mean, now that you bring that up, again, with my uncle and his condition, like I said, I don't know exactly when this gentleman who kept calling on him, I don't know what the years were. Well, obviously it was from like 1952 till sometime in the 60s when he got baptized. But I know the whole 1975 idea came off the presses in 1966. That Everlasting Freedom for the Sons of God or something was the name of the book. They didn't say they were saying 75 was going to be the end. They didn't want anybody saying it, but they, as we all know now, they were saying it. And I'm sure that was the kind of thing that was being put in people's ears, especially somebody like my paraplegic uncle. Hey, it won't be too much longer and you'll get to walk again. Really? Yes, really. There you have it. And then, that just kind of bled over into my family, my dad.
And just like so many others, the pattern is that there's some sort of point of vulnerability, and then that's an opening for someone like Jehovah's Witnesses to come in and to, like you said, sell him this false hope, whatever the case may be, because he wanted to walk again, or and of course the family would have wanted that as well. So there's just everybody was affected by that. And then here they come with their hope, no matter whether it's true or not. We're susceptible to that as humans. So that's kind of how it started in your family. Now you were born in. Do you remember, your early memories of it, going to meetings and such, or how it made you feel inside, if nothing else?
Yeah, bored. They were long and boring, but I had to go. My father in particular, my mom got baptized, but she was never 100% committed to the whole thing, and that became manifest as I became older. As I got into my teen years, she started her exit from the organization. By the time I was 18, she had left not just the organization, but my parents got a divorce. She moved back to the Jeffersonville area to be with her family, her worldly family, as it were. So I didn't always feel as a kid that pressure to, pay attention to what they're saying. If I had a bound volume or something, I was just reading a different story. Nobody was really giving me a lot of grief, and it may be where I was raised. It seemed like the congregation I was in was kind of relaxed about things. I mean, we were not wearing ties before not wearing ties was cool. When I was a kid, at least not for us youngsters. If unless you had to talk, you didn't have to. Nobody was getting on your case for not having a tie or a jacket on. But That's how we always do when one of our contemporaries was given a talk that evening at the meetings when they came in with their suit and tie, and we'd all giggle at him and say, "Ha, you got to talk tonight, sucker."
Well, and now that can be recreated in every congregation, as nobody has to wear ties anymore unless they're giving a talk on the platform, right? So you're gonna know who's in for it each night now because they're all dressed up.
Yeah, that's correct.
So obviously, so the meetings weren't a place that you were super like you said, they were boring. Did you have many friends? Did you connect growing up in the Kingdom Hall? Was there anything there for you, whether it was, hey, we get to go out and service and go to McDonald's on break, or like, was there anything in any of it that you kind of connected to?
Early on, no, not really. No, I mean, I guess I had friends. But I again, my parents, my dad was a hardcore witness, but they were still relatively liberal. My mother babysat neighborhood kids. Parents had to work; both mom and dad had to work. They paid her a little bit, and they'd stay. They were at my house. I grew up almost having siblings. I mean, they were like my brothers and sisters. They were all relatively close to my age, within a year or two, or maybe even same age. And yes, they were worldly, but I mean, they were my friends. They were my friends. Nobody was that whole they're just your acquaintances thing was out the window, and pretty much everybody in my family accepted that. I wasn't I wasn't close to too many witness kids at the hall, kids in the circuit. I mean, there were a few. There was one in particular that was about my age. He, for some reason, wanted to be my friend, and he just was all the time like trying to be my friend. I didn't really want anything to do with him. It wasn't until I finally, as they would say, made the truth my own that I kind of started to truly develop a friendship with him. But other than that, I mean, those kinds of friendships with other witnesses didn't happen until I started closing in on my adult years, really.
Wow, so that's interesting that you got to be around so many, again, quote, worldly, non-Jehovah's Witness kids. That's
Yeah.
the exception to the rule, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, did you go to public school, or
Yes.
and so did you have friends at school as well? Like, were you a person, because Jehovah's Witnesses make this great distinction between this great division between being friends with the world and friends with Jehovah and
Yeah.
Jehovah's people, the witnesses. So you had all these other friends. So then was it okay for you to have friends at school? Did you fit in? Was that a problem?
Well, I mean, that's where I did have friends at school, but there was still that stigma, I think, attached, because yes, while I can be friends with you guys. Yeah, we don't have an issue with each other personally. Yeah, no, I can't come to the Christmas party. No, I've got to leave the room when the flag salute's happening. No, I can't eat the birthday cake. I got to go to the library when this is happening. There was all of that. I mean, you couldn't play sports, obviously. Yeah, I couldn't go to prom. Couldn't do any of the things, as I'm certain you're well aware of as well. You probably couldn't do those things either, which kind of made you, like maybe like felt like I had like odd socks on or something when I went to school. If you know what I'm saying, like I was still there. It's like I was almost like everybody else, but there's just this one thing that makes me not like everybody else. So yeah, it wasn't 100% the way I would have liked it to be, but I did make friends at school, and I still have friendships with people I went to school with.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad that you were able to maintain those. Not to I don't really like to compare people's trauma or pain or whatever. I don't think that that's beneficial, but just to acknowledge the difference. For a lot of witness kids, they would not have had any friends at school or have been allowed to,
Yeah.
and then also been forced to be different. But in your case, you did have these friends, so I would imagine that was a little bit different because you had an attachment to these other kids, and they were probably like, well, why's Greg got to go outside? And so you may have had to answer for things to other kids that some of us who were just the weird one that didn't really have any friends, maybe we didn't even have to explain it because whatever, we were just the oddballs. Whereas you actually did have some attachments, and these other kids probably wondered, well, and there's probably some pressure there too. Like, come on, Greg, come have fun with the rest of us.
There was, and that's what made it awkward. Is you wanted to, but then there was that part of you that thought I really shouldn't be doing that anyway because they're a bad association. So yeah, I mean it was always a conundrum as far as I was concerned. This is not all the way off topic, but a little bit, but I'll share a story. Something that happened. I think it was in first grade. There was this young man that was a boy that was sitting next to me in class or whatever. And when it came time for the flag salute, since I brought that up, the whole class would get up. Teacher already knew that I wasn't doing it, so this young man, I'll never forget his name. I don't know where he's at now. His name was Ace Suits. I'll never forget his name. He decided to sit down with me while the flag salute was going on. And my first grade teacher was not a kind woman, but she did respect, my religious beliefs. So she questions Ace why he didn't stand up and salute the flag. And he said, well, Greg didn't do it, so I'm not doing it. So she made him stand up in front of the whole class and do the flag salute all by himself. Talk about feeling like an asshole. Watching this poor kid get humiliated in front of the entire class because of me. I thought for sure somebody was going to take it out on me, after school, but thank goodness that didn't happen. But I mean, it's the repercussions of being a Jehovah's Witness affect somebody who's not even a witness in a situation like that. And that's one of those things I've never forgotten or stopped feeling bad about.
Well, I was just saying, what's sad about that is here's first grade Greg. Like, you didn't do anything. He made the choice to do this. You don't need to feel bad about it. He, made a choice to accompany you, which was honestly, I mean, I don't know if he was just being a little defiant or if he was just like, hey, he's not doing it and I don't want him to sit alone, so I'll sit with him, which is what it sounds like. And that's a beautiful thing. That the person who should feel ashamed, if anybody, is a teacher who would then punish that kid and make that kid stand up in front of the class and try to humiliate him. That's horrible. But you guys were just kids. You all don't have anything to be ashamed of.
Yeah,
that's
certainly not.
But isn't that the thing though? Like, witnesses always it's always your fault.
Yeah,
and because
absolutely.
we're the odd ducks and we stand out. We feel like it's us. It must be us. Hey, quick announcement here. If you're enjoying getting to know our guests today and you'd like an opportunity to know them better beyond their story here, I actually have another podcast of sorts called The Back Room. Yes, like taking somebody into the back room at the Kingdom Hall. I'm taking each guest now into the back room and we're going to have a little conversation. 5 quick hitting questions and answers from them about subjects and topics that maybe we're not always discussing here on the podcast. So if you'd like to get to know them more, you have an opportunity to see a little video of each individual from the time that you join. And you also get to interact with these individuals because if they're willing, of course, if they're comfortable, we'll provide their socials and you guys can connect and support one another. Maybe you make a new friend out of it. I don't know. But, I know people really connect to a lot of the guests here, and it's a great way to connect even more. And while you're doing so, you're also supporting me and all the work that I put into this, all the time, the money, the energy, and you get a bonus for it as well. So go to patreon.com/shunned and just join the back room tier. And you'll get all the information sent right to you after the episode is released so that you can go further and go deeper and get to know our guests better. And perhaps they'll get to know you too. Speaking of which, now let's get back to our guests.
Yeah. Yeah. And I certainly felt that way in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, in retrospect, I mean, the things that you just said are certainly applicable. I'm sure he probably just didn't want me to be the odd man out, or he thought, hey, this is an excuse to not have to do it. If he's not doing it, then I don't have to do it. Well, he found out real fast that wasn't the case because, this teacher was absolutely merciless. She was mean and cruel, so much so that it traumatized me for my school experience. I was terrified to have a teacher that was like that. She ended up teaching 4th grade as I was moving up the the ranks in school, and I was about to go into 4th grade when she became a 4th grade teacher. And my parents actually went to the school and said, "You will be goddamned if you put him in her class." They didn't say that; I said that, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Wow. I mean, yeah. What kind of an adult gets off on bullying 6-year-olds? That's pretty. That's pretty sad. I just, I can see how that would have traumatized you in school. I mean, it's your 1st grade, literally, and here you are already having problems around something that often starts literally every school day, right? So
Yeah.
that's just, oh, that's horrible, because you know you're gonna have to face that every day.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of our parents never had to face that because they didn't grow up Jehovah's Witnesses, and so they don't really know what it's like even though they're enforcing those things on their kids.
Yeah.
Uh, so, what was life like at home for you growing up? You know, were you all the family that was at all the meetings? What was the temperature of the house? Did people get along? Were you all having a good time?
Yeah, I would say for the most part that's true. Um, Pretty normal, loving household. Like I said, I'm the youngest of five. My brother was already married by the time, like I said, I was up and about and aware of my surroundings. My older sister followed suit pretty soon thereafter when I was about, I think I was 5 years old when she got married. And it ended up by the time I was 10, it was just my next oldest sister, the one that's closest to me in age, and my mom and dad. Like I said, my mom, she even at that point I think was starting to skid when it came to the whole witness thing. She stopped going to book study, and then she'd stop going to the ministry school and service meeting, and then Sunday meeting. She just went to assemblies, conventions, and memorials. That started causing problems, but that didn't start happening until really my teen years. Before that, yeah, things were fairly hunky dory. Yeah, I think we had the book study at our home when I was a kid. I know we had meetings for field service there because that was something I just did not want to do, especially as a child. And to his credit, my dad didn't force me to go when I was little, even though I guess he should have been training me. He really didn't put a focus on that, which, like I said, I'm glad about now. He was an elder for he was an elder for about 5 years. Then there was a big shakeup that happened, and he didn't get reappointed for 10 years after the initial, the shakeup. And if you care to know what that is, that was one of the first things that I saw with my own eyes that I thought, what's going on here in this religion?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So a doubt for
yeah.
how were you when that happened?
I was about 9 or 10.
Wow. So what happened?
Well, the elder body was comprised of, we had four elders, and there was a fifth elder that was he was a part-time elder, and I'll explain that. He was a retired gentleman, and so he and his wife spent their winters in Florida. So he'd be gone 3, 4, or 5 months. He also professed to be of the anointed. John Bennett was his name, and I can say that because he's dead. And you may have even heard the name because he was from here and from Indiana, and he kind of cast a big shadow. Well, long and short of it is, several of the elders' sons, and I think maybe a couple ministerial servants' kids, they were all teenagers, got involved in some sort of wrongdoing, and the elders whose kids were involved tried essentially to, again, a trend that's coming back around today, in-house their punishment rather than having judicial hearings with judicial committee and disfellowshipping and all that. No, dad's an elder. You did bad, and we're gonna handle this at home. And in my opinion, there was a nosy ministerial servant in the congregation that I guess got wind of what was going on. He went to the circuit overseer and told him what was happening. Circuit overseer confronts the elder body. They bring in judicial committees, and I think like one of the kids might have gotten publicly reproved or something, but you didn't know about any of the others. Well, when they brought these other elders in to form committees, people started getting disfellowshipped and publicly reproved and all that. And the decision was made to remove the body of elders, all of them. And my dad had no knowledge of anything going on. He didn't even know this was happening because they had kept it hush hush. How this ministerial servant found out, I'll never know. And I guess one of the elders, when the decision was made, said, well, if you want to remove all of us, fine. We deserve it. Pointed to my dad and said, but don't remove this man. He was not involved in any of this, didn't know anything about what was going on at all. Didn't matter. They removed him anyway. And, I mean, maybe they felt like they had to, but I thought that was unjust, even as a kid. But it got worse because they made the announcement on a Sunday, which is unusual. Two elders from a nearby congregation came in to fill the void. The one got up on the platform and probably shocked everybody to death that he was getting up there, and said, "I know you guys are you're probably wondering what I'm doing up here." Pulled out a piece of paper and read off the names of the elders that had been removed and said, "Okay, let's sing song number 8 or whatever." And the meeting continued. Everybody was shocked. Yeah, it was a Sunday. They didn't. I don't know if it was the times. Because these things happen now at the midweek meeting. It didn't take long before they rebuilt a body of elders. There were elders that moved in from other congregations, ministerial servants that moved in and were quickly appointed as elders. In fact, the little tattletale ministerial servant that I mentioned, he became an elder pretty quickly as well.
Oh, I bet he did.
Oh, yeah. The thing that was odd was all of our families, the four, then the elder that professed to be the anointed that took his winters in Florida, nothing ever. I mean, he wasn't. Of course, he didn't have any kids. He didn't have a dog in this fight. But yeah, he didn't get removed at all. And I don't think he would have, even if he'd been in Indiana at the time, because anointed, so probably was untouchable.
Yep.
But our families, after this change occurred, were literally treated, all of us, like we were disfellowshipped for a long period of time. You'd go to give comments at the meeting, wouldn't call on you. People wouldn't talk to us. We were treated like pariahs. It was very uncomfortable for quite a long time. It took my father 5 years just to get reappointed as a ministerial servant. And he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, he did nothing wrong. Like I said, he didn't have a dog in this fight either. But I don't know if it was the stigma of what had happened or what. And he had ability. I mean, he was a good speaker. He was compassionate. I mean, he was in this thing for the right reasons. Even if they're wrong, he still had, his motives were pure. And just seeing that take place, the way we were treated, the fact that it took him that long just to be reappointed as a ministerial servant, and then another 5 years to get reappointed as an elder. When I saw people move into the congregation and 6 months later, bam, they're appointed as elders. It just didn't make any sense to me. And it was one of those first things that told me something's not right here. How is this God's organization? How is this God's, his channel? And this is how people are being treated. It's not just.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious, to a 9-year-old, to some degree, to watch. And kids kind of, they simplify right from wrong, and they can sometimes see things that adults can't because adults complicate things.
We do.
Was your mom, was that around the time your mom started really
making her
pulling
exit
away? Like, was she pulling away? Was that, I guess, a catalyst to some degree for her to go deeper as far as pulling away from this thing?
Maybe. I mean, I don't think, like I said, I don't think she was ever 100% invested, but seeing the injustices being done, I'm sure it didn't help at all. My mom was a twin as well. So she was very close with her twin sister, obviously, as they are wont to be.
Sure.
But the religion divided them. And I'm sure that was a relationship that she longed for. I don't blame her. It was a tempestuous relationship. Don't get me wrong. My aunt, she was a character. But, they were twins and loved each other. So I'm sure that family pull was part of it. But yeah, the fact that there was things like this happening certainly didn't help. And even her and my dad's relationship started to deteriorate. I mean, they got married when they were very young, 16 and 18. So, and there's a lot of that. That's a whole story unto itself that I won't bore you with. But, after she'd raised most of her kids, I was the last one left. I think she was ready to go back to the life she wanted to live, she wanted to make sure that all of her kids were, adults and had been cared for. But yeah, I'm certain that just becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses was not part of her, her plan in life. And then to see, oh, so they're just like every other crappy religion out there. When she saw the things that were taking place, yeah, I think that's when she started to check out.
So it is, isn't it interesting? At the end of the day, right now, of course, in the Jehovah's Witness community, with the governing body announcements and such, and the focus on shunning from governmental organizations like Norway that are pointing out how harmful shunning is, and stripping funding from Jehovah's Witnesses due to some of this. There's Well, I mean, they just made some announcements that were really not huge changes. I mean, they're giving the minimal amount of human acknowledgement to people now. I mean, it's big for witnesses, but for people on the outside looking in, like, it's like, what'd you really do here? You're still shunning people. It's, even if they were to get rid of shunning, you still have things like this in the congregation, right? You can still, your dad gets caught up in this thing and you all are treated almost like you were shunned. You're pariahs in the congregation.
Absolutely.
There's still just this human element. They could do away with the shunning and people would still shun, because shunning is just how you control each other through social relationships. And there'd still be a lot of them who would do that without any qualms about it, because it's just kind of, it's human, sadly, to pull away from other people and try to ostracize them like that. And I'm sure that must have been really hard as a 9-year-old. So now here's the place you're supposed to fit in, and you fit in even less.
Yeah, precisely. And it was hard even for me, just watching my family go through it too. I mean, they were more affected by it than I was. I was just a kid, but I saw the effect it had on my sister and my dad and my mom for that matter. And it really continued throughout the course of the next 10 years. I mean, so you go from 9 to now I'm 8, 17, 18, and I'm still seeing it happen. I mean, but it was like it finally started to lessen. I mean, obviously my dad gets reappointed as a ministerial servant, but it took 5 years to get him. I mean, he didn't change anything about anything he did. He was just as diligent about his meeting attendance. He was just as diligent about his field service time. He prepared well for his talks. He always was prepared to comment at me. I mean, there was no reason why they shouldn't have immediately reappointed him, and they didn't. Not to mention, you've got that whole, like I said, that undercurrent of, people are kind of side eyeing you and maybe not talking to you, and yeah, I mean, so I got to watch all this for basically a decade,
Yeah, it's like you get branded a certain way. Jehovah's Witnesses aren't super great at forgiving, like they say. I mean, there's there's a reason they keep files on you. They're not forgiving anything. It's always there.
I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the change that's been made about how to treat disfellowshipped ones moving forward. And I've actually said this, that what you just said, I've said to other people that I've heard say, this isn't a big deal. What's the big deal? You could do that. I'm like, well, no, you couldn't. You really couldn't say hi to somebody disfellowship. You couldn't call them on the phone. It's a big change for them, not for us. It's not a big change for us. And it's certainly not a big change for me. And I know it's not a big change for you because of what you got behind your head there in this video. You're a known apostate, probably.
Oh,
and
yeah.
My family looks at me. This is funny. My wife's sister, who is she is the wife of one of the elders that moved into our congregation to replace our elder body. So she's that elder's wife is now my sister-in-law, whether she likes it or not. Her family was, when we first got together, because this caused my wife problems, our getting together. She's baptized. She never got disfellowship. She faded. her and her Jehovah's Witness husband divorced years ago. Before we had gotten together, she was living her life. She would have boyfriends and things of that nature. She could bring them right into her home and have dinner with her family. Nobody said a word. Then she starts dating me. And I'm disfellowshipped. Well, I disassociated myself. That's a problem. So they start treating her differently as a result of that. Well, we can't talk to you anymore because you're with him. And they even, I think it was her sister, went as far as to say that I was I was the leader of an apostate movement.
Oh, congratulations, Greg.
Yeah, I'm like, well, where's my badge? Do I get a salary? Are there benefits? Give this to me. I want it. No, just because I've made some comments on some form of social media doesn't. But that's the impression that they had of me, and so that's why I didn't get a memorial invite. I'm sure my brother and my two sisters that are still Jehovah's Witnesses, their kids, my nieces and nephews, not a one of them called old Greg up to say, hey, by the way, we can invite you to a meeting now or the memorial. No, because they think that I guess my life's not worth saving. And as far as I'm concerned, that announcement, it's a slap in the face. You can talk to a regular disfellowship person, but not an apostate. Well, who needs saving the most? Isn't it apostates? They're the ones you need to turn around. Why wouldn't you come for us first? But that's just me ranting.
Oh, but that's because as I said on my, so I did a little reenactment of their video, saying all the quiet parts out loud. And, as I said in there, they don't want the apostates because they know we can see through them.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yes, that is right? True, really.
So don't bring the people in here who are the actual truth tellers who can see through this mess. We can't have that. If it wasn't for the apostates, they wouldn't have just lost money to Norway, right? So
yep, that's correct. Then that is right. Yes, but
so they don't want us around.
So let me then qualify the statement. And this is something that I've put out there for, like I said, in some of the group, group, that I'm sure we're all in. How do they qualify somebody as a known apostate? That's what I want to know. Where's that? How do you qualify that?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I understand somebody who's actively known to go to protests or standing outside an assembly shouting that they're all brainwashed, or somebody like you who's got a YouTube channel, and there are many that are like you that do this kind of thing. Okay, I can get that, because there are people in your shoes that this is what got them disfellowshipped. Hey, we saw you've got a YouTube channel. We need to talk to you about your apostasy.
Sure.
But then there's me. I didn't even disassociate myself for apostasy. I really just wanted them to leave me alone. Yeah, I had committed sin in their eyes, and they were hunting me down. I mean, literally, I didn't even live in the same town anymore. And the elders from the congregation I lived in came to the town I was living in to knock on my door to tell me they needed to meet with me. How am I what is it? How do they put it? Like how am I a corrupting influence on a congregation? I'm not even living in the same town where your kingdom hall's at. So again, how does that qualify me as an apostate? Other than, yes, it's true, I am kind of outspoken now, but not anywhere where I think the average Jehovah's Witness should see it, because they shouldn't be looking there anyway.
Oh, well, for sure. I mean, they shouldn't see my stuff either. They shouldn't be looking here. But you'll see them in the comments sometimes, and it's kind of funny. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, an apostate to Jehovah's Witnesses is really just anybody who disagrees or doesn't think that the governing body is the faithful and discreet slave, or whatever. Like, if you disagree with their teachings, or you would question anything, you're an apostate. That's anything that goes against the grain. So, a lot of the people, because I'm seeing people on ex-Jehovah's Witness groups all over posting, here's what my mom or dad said to me, or whatever. Well, by nature of being on an ex-JW group, you're an apostate to Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, the definition, what is anyone who turns away from a former system of belief. And that's really
We're all
all of
apostates.
us. We're all apostates.
Yeah.
So he shouldn't be talking to any of us.
That's right. Well,
Right?
and I actually heard somebody say, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I actually heard somebody say that because they've made this change and now you can say a greeting, you can say hello, or you can, call somebody, then we're not disfellowshipped anymore because you are talking to us.
Now there's
If you are,
fellowship
huh? Yeah.
because now there's fellowship.
Yes, because now there's fellowship. And I thought, boy, that's a really good point. I never thought of it that way, but they're
Of
right.
course, there's no real fellowship. It's just if you're in a kingdom hall, they can say a basic hello to you. And if you are out there, they can call you to invite you to said kingdom hall to say a greeting.
And that's if their Bible trained conscience will allow them to, which is where my holier than thou sister and brother in law come in. They wouldn't piss on me if I was on fire.
Oh,
so
sure.
their conscience won't allow them to. I can promise you that. That phone call is never going to happen.
Sure. No, I don't remember if I talked about it on here or not, but there was a young brother and sister, and I mean fleshly brother and sister, not spiritual brother and sister. They were Jehovah's Witness. There were these two Jehovah's Witness kids who were brother and sister in a family, and they had gotten stranded, actually coming back from somewhere up north in Indiana during a snowstorm, and I think a truck ran them and their car off the road, and the state troopers took them and put them in a hotel not far from me. And who came to the rescue? So there was an ex-Jehovah's Witness that knew them and that called me because she knew that I lived in this area and asked me, would you help these kids get home? And so here comes apostate Mike driving on the icy roads to go get two Jehovah's Witness kids and to take them all the way. I had to take them all the way the other side south of Louisville to Fairdale, took them home, dropped them off with their parents who never came out and said thank you to me or anything. And I didn't have to do it. And I wasn't doing it just for like their kudos or something or the story, but just it was the right thing to do. Here's two young kids who got ran off the highway and are stranded in a place they don't know. I don't even know if they had money for food. I offered to get them food if they needed on the way home or whatever. Like,
they wouldn't do that. They'd have to eat food in your presence, and they can't do that either.
Eat from the table of demons.
That's right.
And so, but I took these two kids home. I don't know what they ever thought of this apostle. They knew who I was because it was told to them. I didn't, but someone told them. And so, like, they knew who I was. And so I took them and, we could, I'm an apostate, but I could still hang around Jehovah's Witnesses and we could be friends. We just don't have to talk about that. There's a million other things to talk about in life. You know, I can hang around people whose political views I don't agree with. I don't have to shun them.
No.
But, we just talk about other things. There's a lot of life outside of these subject matters, isn't there?
Yeah, there certainly is, and it's funny because that's what the Jehovah's Witness lawyers are trying to tell these courts. We don't shun. That's not true. They have the same normal family relationships they always had. They just can't talk about spiritual things. And I think it was the Norway case. I don't know whether it happened anywhere else, but the lawyers for the state were like, "Oh, contraire. Let's show you one of the videos that they've got posted on jw.org," and it was that now famous shunning video where the young girl's calling her mom and you hear her the voiceover. She's like, I just wanted to talk to my mom. I missed her. And mom looks at the phone. It's like, yeah, fuck you. And just, keeps on keeping on. Yeah. Now talk to me about whether or not you shun people. And I think that might have been something that contributed to their loss because this is a human rights issue. But to your point, I think there are people that like I mentioned my own fleshly sister that I should shun anyway. There's another YouTuber that has made a series of videos. He allegedly has somebody, a Bethel insider, that, and maybe you've even seen comments that I've made about this, that purports that Watchtower's got a 10-year plan to revamp their. I'd like to believe it's true, and some of the things that have happened are falling in line with some of the initial things that this guy put out there. Like, allegedly, they are going to repeal shunning. I mean, it's coming at some point. Is it? I don't know, but they're going to use the Jubilee year as like the anti-type. I think that would be nice if they did, but it's not going to have the same satisfaction if our families and friends that have been shunning us can't come to us with an apology and to let us know I was wrong for what I did. We know that's not going to happen. If that were to happen, they're going to say, "Oh, well, the governing body says it's okay now," or they won't, or you'll have hardcore ones that won't.
And at the end of the day, they're still the same unhealthy people that they were while shunning us. They haven't changed, and that's a big part of the problem. Is that, and I think that's where a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses can really find a lot of freedom, is when you realize that when it stops becoming they shun me, and it starts becoming, you know what, do I and would I really want to have much of a relationship with them, knowing who they are, how they see the world, and mostly how they treat people? Would I want to have a relationship with people whose greatest hope in life is that their God comes and murders everyone who's not them so that they can be happy? Like, those aren't people that honestly I really would want to be friends with, or that I would choose as friends or family. So at the end of the day, you find a lot of freedom when you realize how unhealthy they are. Because, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses will spend their entire lives, our Jehovah's Witness parents will spend their entire lives hoping and delusionally thinking that, of course, we know it's the truth and we're going to come back. On the same token, we as ex-witnesses can spend our entire lives delusionally thinking, well, of course they're going to leave, and staking our hopes and happiness on that. And we can be doing the exact same thing in reverse. And that can keep us very stuck instead of acknowledging what is. This is what is. This is who they are. And until they've shown us anything different, it's the same. Like, I know there's these leaks and such, and I do think that there are more changes coming. I don't know when. I believe them all when I see them. Until then, everybody's got an insider right now, and it's kind of interesting.
It is fun to speculate, you know.
Oh, it is fun. It is fun. And the only thing is, if we stake our happiness on it, that's what gets us. That's what can get us emotionally into a stuck place. Is you know, risking our happiness on any of those changes. At the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do. We've got to go live our lives. And at the point where they can finally wake up and leave, and like you said, a real apology, oh man, I see the error of this now, not just, well, the governing body said I can talk to you now. That's insulting.
It is insulting. And that's, again, you've seen the same comments I've seen. You know, "Hi, Tom. I know it's been 25 years since, you know, your mom and I have talked to you, but there's a new understanding." Right there, I'm like, up next, turn the channel. I don't want to watch any more of this. You're a dick for saying that.
Yes.
You know, this one woman, honestly, goodness, I'll be a bit vulnerable. The comment that one young woman made to her parents it actually brought me to tears. What she said to her father about, "I've got like 6 dads in this world. You're not my father. That go fishing with me, work on my cars. We share things. You know, She even said something to the effect of, "You are you're replacing love for a memorial invite or a tract or something." And I was like, wow, that's solid. I wish you were my daughter, because I would be so proud of you for saying that to me if I was that guy. It was beautiful. It really was. And I was like, man, and I've seen so many more people doing things like that. You know, even if they're not that eloquent, you know, no, miss me with that. I don't. You can keep your, you know, your memorial invite. You can stick it
It's
right up your
because it's
student.
not love.
Not love.
It's not love. It's control.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
if it's love, it would just be, hey, I really miss you, and you know what? It's been messed up the way I've been trying to extort you emotionally
Yeah.
through my actions, and I've grown a lot, and I see how immature and ridiculous that is, and how hurtful it's been to you, and that it's no way to express love, and I've turned over a new leaf and I want to accept you for who you are. The messages that are out there right now are no better than some fundamentalist Christian reaching out
Yeah.
to, well, we'll say Tom again. So now Tom is gay, and mom and dad threw Tom out as soon as he turned 18 because he's gay. And now they're reaching out after a few years saying, hey, Tom, we really love you so much. And we can be family again if you'll go through this conversion therapy.
Yeah.
Because that's all they're trying to do. Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to do their own conversion therapy on us to try to make us like them again so then they can love us, which is not love.
Yeah. You're
And it's you see that, and so it really kind of even cuts back to what you're talking about. So like your dad, here he is taken down as an elder. You all as a family are treated as some sort of pariahs. Like, where is the love in the organization? And isn't that supposed to be the hallmark of true Christians? Is you would know them by the love they have for one another? Where's the love?
There was missing. It was not present that day or any other day thereafter for
Yeah,
a long, long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like your mom, and we'll get to it in a second, I'm sure, or whatever. But you said that like she had this twin sister, probably that she loved,
Very much so.
and Jehovah's Witnesses became this wedge in the relationship instead of bringing people together. The truth, Jehovah's Witnesses separate people. I love that scripture from Jesus where he came to put a sword between
yeah.
people,
Uh-huh.
or whatever.
Yeah, mothers and sons and fathers and daughters, however, yeah. But again, I think it's like so many other things that they cherry pick
Yes.
to make their doctrine, make into their doctrine. If you read the context of what Jesus was actually saying there, it's nothing to do with like separating families. If I'm not mistaken, and if somebody watching this wants to correct me, they're welcome to.
Yeah. I've not gone and read the context, but it is just, but yeah, like you said, they cherry pick things to fit a narrative that they want it to fit to explain their lack of love. In the last days, there'll be a lack of natural affection. Who's that applied to? Jehovah's Witnesses. Where's their
Yes,
love for
indeed.
their own kids? That's messed up.
Yeah. Or for
Uh,
their own parents. I mean,
yeah.
I've still got 2 adult children that are indoctrinated, and
Mm.
my youngest, my daughter, is actually getting married in about 2 weeks to a Jehovah's Witness. It's not in the Kingdom Hall. I am invited, but can I walk my own daughter down the aisle? No. Can I stay for the reception? No. And I already know this, obviously. I mean, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I know the rules. Whether they want to call them rules or not, my sister corrected me. They're not rules. They're my beliefs. And I'm like, oh no, there are still rules, regardless of
There's
how
an
you.
enforcement of those beliefs. There's
Yeah,
punishment, therefore they are
yeah,
rules.
they are in fact rules. So yeah, my daughter, informs me. Of course, I'm sure you realize that you can't stay for the reception, and she also said something to the effect. It kind of offended me. I guess her fiance's father is also not a witness, and he and his girlfriend had been invited to the wedding, and it was the way she worded it. It almost sounded like she was saying, "Well, I kind of got to invite you because my fiance is inviting his father, who's not a witness." So I guess I'm stuck with that. And I don't know that she really meant it that way, but that's how it felt. It was like a punch in the gut. It was like, wow.
Well,
So
of course
I question whether or not you really want me to come to your wedding, but by God, I'm going to go to it because you're my daughter, and I'm not gonna miss that. Even if I am completely excluded from everything, and that's going to be painful. But I want to be a thumb in their eye on top of everything else. I know that sounds terrible, but I want them to all have to look at me because I am the pariah.
Well,
You
I
know,
get it. Everybody has to decide, and I mean, in these situations, what to do. How horrible it is that you are the father of the bride, and yet you're not going to be allowed to do the traditional things, or to really you're included, but you're excluded at the same
yeah,
time, and
yeah,
that's it's just like a disfellowship person can come to a Kingdom Hall today, and people have the option now of saying hello to that person, but not conversing further.
yeah.
It's that insult. It is insulting
Yes.
to like, I'm a full human here. Do you realize this? Like, I'm not your friend that is kept in a closet that you can pull out occasionally and talk to. Like,
Mm,
we're either we're in, or we're out, and we all have to decide what we can tolerate, and for what the benefit is to us, because ultimately
yeah,
you don't have to light yourself on fire to keep somebody else warm. But if there
right.
is something in this for you, of course, this is your daughter, you want to be present. It's
Mm,
a memory for you, and of course you would want to go. It's just there's nothing Jehovah's Witnesses can't make worse.
I know.
There's nothing they
that's
can't make
that's
worse.
quotable right there. There's nothing Jehovah's Witnesses can't make
Yeah, I say
worse.
that all the time.
I couldn't agree
But
more with that.
whether a person, is suffering from a mental illness before they come into the truth, or whether a person has had family issues, or whatever vulnerability they may have had, Jehovah's Witnesses find a way to make it all worse.
Oh yeah, absolutely they
And,
do.
and
There's
it's
no question.
horrible.
Yeah.
It's truly horrible. I'm sorry that's going on in your life right now, because it's so unfair. I mean, good for you. You've got to be you, and just
Yeah.
whatever it is you decide to do it for yourself, and do it with your head held high. And then it's an important lesson to learn to disconnect ourselves from what they think, because they're not well.
No, yeah, no, they're not. Yeah, I
They're
couldn't
they're, they're not
agree
okay.
more on that either.
They're just
Well,
not.
and it's funny going back to the revised stand on how to treat disfellowshipped people. My wife Nicole, she actually made a good point that I hadn't thought of before, and this may very well be the whether it's their thinking on it or it just might be a byproduct. Okay, they've allowed them to open the door a little bit, yeah, no extended conversations, but we already see what's happening. People are having extended conversations. They're reaching out to their disfellowship family members and saying, "We can talk to you now." It's like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's out now. What do you? Yeah, they can't disfellowship everybody for this. I mean, there's a part of me that wonders if it's not calculated on their part. We'll make it look like we still got the rain. Maybe they want this to happen so that they can go, okay, just what, we've looked at it again, and you can talk to your family members. We're going to give you that right. And I know I kind of segued there, but that's been on my mind too. That especially in light of my daughter's wedding. I mean, because I wonder how that's going to go. Will people? It'll be interesting to see if any of my family decides to say, "Well, we can come up and say hi to you now, even though it's not a Kingdom Hall." I'm certain my daughter, my son, you know, my ex-wife will run and hide from me. I already know that that's not going to happen, and that's okay because I don't really want to say hi to her either. But I'm certain my whole extended family is going to be there, all the Jehovah's Witness side, and it'll be interesting to see if they care to engage me. I mean, I am the father of the bride. You'd think it would be courteous to at least say hello or how you doing or anything, but we'll see. And that's why that's why I'm kind of tying those two together because like I said with my family, it's hard to tell what they'll do, but with other people and how they're dealing with their families, what I'm seeing, it's been mind blowing. You
Well, and I
know,
think, so you're saying a few things there. So uh, it has always been the case that there have been people who, even with the strict shunning rule, there's always been people that have still reached out to their disfellowshipped family.
That's right.
And not just for their necessary family business BS, which is there to further extract and manipulate feelings from the people they're shunning.
Certainly.
But you can see, and this is why this is the difficult thing with all of this. Yes, these adult Jehovah's Witnesses are coerced by a cult, and their mind is not 100% their own to shun. But at the same time, things are not black and white, all or nothing. You can also see, and have always been able to see, that there are Jehovah's Witnesses that would look for excuses to talk to their kids.
Yeah.
And so, just like my family shunned me a year and a half before I ever even left the Witnesses and disassociated, they shunned me before they ever had to. They were go-getters. This is who they were. They were authoritarian. They like punishment, crime, and like this is who they are. And you could see some of their personality in the way that they chose to interact or not interact with myself and my wife. There are other Jehovah's Witnesses who have always been different. It is a cult, but not everyone reacts the same. And therein, you can actually start to see at times a little of the personality of the person who either is staunchly shunning or is not shunning at all or is somewhere in between.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, and you do see that. And my understanding is too that if it's a family member, even before this change, then they really can't do anything to you about it. If you're talking to your dad and he's disfellowshipped, it's like, well, you shouldn't, but but if I'm just talking to somebody that I was friends with and we're hanging out and we're going to see movies together, or I'm having them over for dinner or whatever, okay, now you're sitting at the table of demons, as you said.
Right. Well, again, and so a cult can keep things quite ambiguous. There's the culture of Jehovah's Witnesses and the strictly written thou shalt not rules of Jehovah's Witnesses. And at the end of the day, you can be counseled, shunned yourself, or just reproved, or like your family was, just be seen as a pariah for any reason if you do anything that goes against the grain of the culture of Jehovah's Witnesses and what it means to be one. And so, that's so they really do a good job of saying things without saying them directly so that everybody knows what the real deal is, but they try not to, just like you always liked heavy metal music. Well, they came out with articles about it, but they weren't naming certain bands. But then you knew, like, you couldn't even get close to things because in this congregation, the elder body was super strict, but in this one, they were super permissive. And so it's all just gaslighting. It creates confusion. And at the end of the day, like, you're talking about going to this wedding and you're like, well, what are they going to do? How are they going to treat me? Who's going to say what? And we've been born and raised and bred to be reactive to them instead of deciding who we are.
That's true.
Who am I? And who? Last year Jenny and I went to her grandparents' 70th wedding anniversary. Congratulations to them. That's wild.
Yeah. That's an accomplishment right there.
Right? They were never Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah. They were never Jehovah's Witnesses, but Jenny and I were going to be there. And the whole family is non-JW except for Jenny's mom and dad and her 4 younger sisters. And some of them have husbands and children. And so the question, wasn't it when we go, because we weren't going to be excluded from this. So when we go, it wasn't so much how are they going to treat us? It is how do we want to treat them?
Yeah.
And so we had to decide ourselves what we wanted in our lives. And that was it's Jenny's family, so it's really more her decision. But
Really.
and so the decision was, even if they wanted to talk to us, which they didn't, they shunned us completely in front of everyone, which was fine with us because our decision was, I don't want to pretend like everything's okay because it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take your conversation to me to make you all look good in front of all of these other people so that then you can act like, well, what's Mike and Jenny talking about? See, we don't shun them. No, 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 no. Fuck that. You have been shunning us hardcore since 2015. And if it's the right thing to do, then it's the right thing to do. And you should continue that, keep that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anything to do with you until my family, and this is my decision, everybody has to decide, but until I hear from my family, oh, I see that this is not the truth, and I'm leaving. I don't want anything to do with them either because they're not healthy. Yeah. And I don't need that drama in my life. All they do is disturb the peace, and I have peace and happiness. I don't need them for it.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And that's really how that is my approach when it comes to what I'm about to have to do.
It's tough.
Wedding. What they do or don't do, and this is going to be basically an all Jehovah's Witness. I'm going to be the odd man out, but I'm not the guy that's going to walk up and, hey, I'm going to talk to you anyway. I know you. I'm with you. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to. I mean, other than my two children, which I expect them to talk to me, I will be upset if they don't, and I might say something if they don't. But if any of my family, other than them, tries to come up and carry on with me like nothing ever happened, they can kiss my ass and call it ice cream because I don't want any part of that. And I was just talking to Nicole, my wife, about this last night. Like what you said, I don't want my peace disturbed, and I'm not going to let them have an inch. I might be polite to them, but I'm not going to act like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, because we were taught, right? Our whole lives growing up in the cult, we were taught to live our lives by putting aside our feelings and replacing them with the feelings of others and what those individuals wanted. And so we've been taught to thank them for the most minimal of conversation, to tell them that we respect their beliefs and such. But at the end of the day, I don't respect your beliefs. They're not good and they hurt people and they're hurting you. So I have a hard time respecting that. I respect your right to believe what you want.
Yes.
I don't have to respect your belief. Yeah. And I don't thank you. If anyone tried to reach out to me, no, I don't thank you for the manipulation. Yeah. I don't thank you for trying to gaslight me and to extort me through our relationship to come back to a cult. That's not cool.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's so strange you should say that too. I did just have an experience a few weeks ago. My former mother-in-law passed away. It was rather unexpected. As far as I was concerned, she lived with my ex-wife. And I won't even get into that story, but there's a part of the reason why my exit happened was, she was heavily involved in our lives, and to the point even my family, elders in our congregation were coming to me and saying, you need to make a separation because she had undue influence, even for Jehovah's Witnesses standards. But anyway, she passed away, and I actually informed my ex-wife's cousins, who she was never close to, never liked, that are also no longer Jehovah's Witnesses. They passed the information on to their mother, who would have been my mother-in-law's sister-in-law. I'm not making this too confused. Their husbands were brothers. Also did not have a good relationship. These two women did not. And she, unexpectedly, the sister-in-law, messaged me on Facebook wanting to know what had happened. And she is a hardcore, Jehovah's Witness. And I said what happened, everything that I knew. And she thanked me for giving her the information. And yet, I know you're disfellowshipped, but this was before the announcement came out about talking to people like us. you can always return to Jehovah, blah, 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 the spiel. And I essentially said exactly what you said. I said, well, you're right. I'm no longer a Jehovah's Witness, but I respect everybody's right to believe whatever they want to believe and worship however they want to worship. And she was like, okay, good talk. I'm out. She didn't want to have any more to do with me after that. And I was grateful for that because I didn't want that conversation getting extended beyond what it had to anyway. But yeah, fuck you. You know what? Don't come to me with that. You know, if you want to show care and concern for me, show it. But if you're going to do
condescending.
It is. It is. It insults my intelligence when things like that happen.
Yes. How would they feel if every time they reached out to us, we were like, hey, you know, if you ever want help leaving this cult that you're in, please reach out. I'm happy to help you leave the cult that you're in. Cult. Please come, come break free. If you'd like to retake your own mind and your own thoughts and feelings and your own persona, and you'd like to live a life as a real human out here in the real world, please let us know. And they would be so offended by that, right? But isn't that what they're doing to us all the time? No, screw that.
Yeah, all the time. That's their MO. Again, as we've been talking, I've been seeing it. Literally since last Friday in particular. I've seen it before that, but ever since last Friday, that's what you see. It's just bam, 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 person after person after person after person. You know, my mom texted me. My brother texted me. My grandparents, you know, haven't talked to these people in 15, 25, 30 years. Didn't even recognize my dad's voice, as one lady said. And it's all, we have a new understanding. That, to me, that's such cult speak anyway. It's like, yeah, so somebody told you that it's okay now, so now it's okay because they said so. And they have that's the control they exert on your life. That once they flip that switch, 5 minutes ago you couldn't do it, but when they flip that switch, oh, now I can. How can you not? How can you not see that being controlled? I just don't get it. I beat my head against the wall in frustration that people still just gulp it all down. It's nuts.
And that's because people are in cults not as an intellectual exercise, but as an emotional exercise. And there are feelings that keep them stuck because logic would obviously dictate if they could give you pants as a grown woman today, they could have taken away the pants for the past decades and decades of your life. And so therefore, like, can't you realize that they took this from you for so long? They're now just giving you this, and you're so thirsty that you're mistaking a drop of water in the desert for an oasis.
Yeah.
It's not. They just threw you a crumb. And you're like, oh, it's such a tasty meal. No, it's not, man. They gave you nothing. You're just that hungry.
Yeah. I can't help but laugh at it because, again, something else I'm certain you've seen is all the pictures that are being posted of women in their pants, like kicking their legs out, like in a group, their arms around each other, like, check it out, yo. And, yeah, you've always been able to wear pants. Always. There's never been and I actually had somebody tell me that. Well, you know, I faded a number of years ago, but my husband's still in, and he said you always could wear pants. You just wouldn't get extra privileges. And I'm like, okay, you could always have a beard too, and you wouldn't get privileges. But you know what else you got? You got side-eyed. You got stigma. You're not a spiritually minded enough person, and you might even get a little bit shunned by people. You might not get disfellowshipped, but you might be marked for that kind of behavior because the elders certainly would have come to you and said, Brother Johnson, the beard really has to go. And if you're like, no, I'll eat my butthole, I ain't going to shave the beard off. Enough times, okay, well, now you're resisting counsel. We're going to have to give a talk about resisting counsel, and everybody's going to know about you. It's about you, and now people are going to treat you differently. And yeah, you too, sister pants wearer. That's going to happen to you too. So stop making it. Again, even though you're not you faded out, you're still trying to make out like, I don't even know what she's trying to make out like.
Sounds like someone is a little pomey, and they're still defensive of the organization.
Yeah.
And again, yes, you always could have done lots of things, but isn't it interesting that nobody did?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? If
It's
you
terrible.
always could, then why weren't people?
Like, didn't you?
So then that shows that there must have been something there, right?
That's right.
Isn't it odd that all human behavior there conformed? There must have been a pressure that made it do so.
Absolutely.
It's not you're not free, and
No.
that's the actual truth of the matter. It's just they have excuses for everything. Jehovah's Witnesses are spin masters, and they have learned how to gaslight from the best. So
Yeah.
that's what they do. What you saw, you didn't really see. It was actually different. It
Yeah.
wasn't what you really saw with your own eyes.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. Yeah, that's precisely what they did. That's what like we were just saying. That's what's so crazy to me is literally the day after this announcement's made, there it is. You see, you see these women all in pants at the meetings, like, oh yeah, look at this. We got these pants now. What the hell? Well, and then if you go back, because I remember when the beard thing happened, I saw somebody's presentation on I think it was on YouTube about because that was the question. Okay, guys can wear beards now. What will you give to the ladies? I mean, shouldn't they be able to wear pants? That was a big topic of conversation, and somebody did some research on what we used to call the society's stand was on women wearing pants, and I mean, it was so archaic. It was unbelievable. And I mean, we're going back, several decades. How well maybe if a woman's doing some housework or she's, working on the farm or something, she can, wear a pair of her husband's pants, his old work pants or something. But I'm thinking, what planet are you guys on? I mean, and of
Planet
course,
misogyny.
yeah, absolutely. And we know obviously that they're not like they've never been like Pentecostals where women have to wear dresses all the time. And you can have your jeans or your cat. I love how they still try to tell you how they've got pictures, or they used to, on the old information board on what proper dress should look like. Like, here's meeting attire. This is back when you had to have the jacket and tie and the dress. And then of course you see a guy over here. Here's what you should look like in your casual, everyday wear. And it was the guy with the khakis and a button-up shirt and some really dorky looking tennis shoes, and his hair severely parted on the side, and like, so even then as we well know, this is not revelatory, we all know this, they still are they're trying to control every aspect of your life, right down to what you think about.
Of course. And when they when they let go of control, there's still control around the new thing. There's going to be over time guidelines around beards,
Absolutely.
guidelines around pants, and guidelines around what kind of shirt a brother can wear now, since he does not have to have a tie and a jacket. Can I have a polo shirt? Does it need to still be a dress shirt? Must it have a collar? What color can it be? What are the patterns that are accepted? What if it has writing on it? What if it has a Tommy Hilfiger logo or something like that? Is that acceptable? There's going to
that's
be
creature worship, so no, you can't. You can't have something with like Michael Jordan, the Air Jordans,
yes,
but if you get JW.org, that's good because that's not creature worship. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh yeah, you got to have a JW. Well, maybe this opens the door, Greg, for their own line of pants and shirts.
Would I be surprised? No, not even a little bit. I mean, they've already got. You've already seen the lapel badges, and I think you got some entrepreneurs out there that are doing like ties that have like the JW.
Oh, there's already a company that has like, I don't know,
beard care,
blessed beard oil or something that is like.
Where can I get it? I need it. I want it.
There is. I saw it somewhere online. I don't remember where I saw it now, but it is a company that has basically, it seems to be Jehovah's Witnesses, and they have created beard balms and beard oils and such. Maybe they'll have some anointing oil. I don't know, but it's great.
That is just that's fantastic. I knew that there were some, like I said, some entrepreneurs out there that were doing some stuff, especially with like the branding, the JW.org thing. But beard oil, heck yeah. Yeah, this might be the new venture that they need to get into, as you said. Yeah,
They need to get into. It's the venture I need to get
into. Hell yeah, I'm with you on that.
Start selling these products as an apostate and making money off this.
like that scene in a Fight Club where they're stealing the fat from the liposuction company. And he said that they were selling these women their fat asses back to him. That's essentially what we would be. No offense meant. I
haven't even seen the movie, but
you should. It's great. But yeah, that's kind of what we would be doing. We'd be kind of selling their fat asses back to them. Here's we don't buy this stuff, but you will, and we'll sell it to you.
Yeah,
fair price.
What a weird world we live in.
Yeah.
And so let's get back to your story a little bit. So can I ask you? So where did you fall into this? So where did a young Greg get eventually like baptized into this thing that has led into so much? Your life. Would you say you're 53? 53. So, what age did you start down this process officially that has led to all of this?
Well, I was in my early to mid teens when the idea started, taking shape, or maybe it was being taken shape for me. That area in your life when am I going to make the truth my own kind of, is starting to happen, and you hear talks here and there about even if you don't get baptized, you're still responsible, and God knows that so you're still screwed at Armageddon if you don't make a choice. And the young fellow that went to the same hall as I did, that I mentioned earlier, that always wanted to be friends with me, he was almost like a fatherless boy. Not really. His parents were around and alive, and they just weren't real active. And so, like, my father and I would pick him up and take him to the meetings with us. He always wore a suit and tie to the meeting. He was. Everybody just thought he was like the perfect example of what a young Jehovah's Witness should be. And I kind of resented that because again, here my father had done everything the right way. I was his son. I was trying to do everything the right way, even if I had some doubts about things. And I think that stigma still hung over our heads, my head. And he got baptized. And I think I got baptized 6 months later because I was like, I'm not going to let this little bastard show me up. And I think that's really what that pushed me to get baptized, was that. So I got baptized at 15, November 15th, 1986. I still remember the date. I wrote it in the back of my Bible. I think we all did that back then.
Oh, you were basically told to, right? That's the most important day of your life. You must remember it. Yes.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So that's when it all began.
So I love your reason for getting baptized. And honestly, I think that there are a lot of young Jehovah's Witnesses that are really getting baptized because they have a peer who's doing it, and they know there's this pressure, right? They're doing it. I need to do it too. Yeah. I'm already a pariah. I don't need to be even more of a pariah as I continue getting older, and I've not yet made the truth my own by getting baptized.
That's right. Yeah.
A lot of pressure, isn't it?
There's a lot of pressure. And then starts I guess the competition, if you will, because now you get two young men in the congregation. Who's going to get to carry the mics, and who's going to get to, adjust the platform mics? And we were never allowed to do the sound at our congregation. That was for the older fellows. They entrusted that to them rather than us.
So, like you said, the two of you are getting baptized. The competition starts. There's also a lot of pressure in that too, though, isn't there? I mean, not only do you maybe feel it internally anyway, but the elders will start asking you to do things, and they're kind of showing their favor by who they ask, or that first time you have to say prayer at the meeting, or whatever the case may be, or you're asked to lead a group out for service. Like, There's a lot of pressure that comes along with being baptized as a young man, isn't there?
Yes, there sure is. And that did, it certainly happened. I'm sure it happened to you as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, given reading at the Watchtower, that was certainly a big privilege because you had to be a capable reader, which both of us happened to be. I think I got that privilege before he did, which that was kind of a feather in my cap. But that's really what kind of started to happen. I mean, he literally like gave the number 2 talk at the circuit assembly shortly after he got baptized. I think he was 13 when he got baptized, and everybody was, he's just like a little junior circuit overseer, and I was seething with rage. I was like, you don't know who you don't know who he is. I know who this little jackass is, and he's not that. I can promise you that. Not that I was, saying I am that, because I mean I wasn't that either. But as we started to progress in age in the congregation, they started giving me more responsibility. When I graduated high school, I had a car. I was taking groups in field service myself. I had my own territory. They moved me into the literature room to help with the literature. This is back in the days when you had to pay for your own literature. So going back a while. So yeah, I started get more privileges in the congregation. I also ended up, dating who ended up being my future wife. But and that all plays in because this was another situation where I saw maybe not an injustice, but I really saw favoritism starting to come to the forefront. There was a guy. He was about 10 years older than me. In fact, he was one of the elders' sons who, 10 years or so before, got involved in the whole thing that got the elder body removed. In fact, this guy got disfellowshipped in the end of things. Obviously, he got reinstated, got married, had a family, moved to another congregation, came back to our home congregation. He was probably in his late 20s at the time. Nice family. We all loved him. He was funny. He was, we used to play basketball on the weekends. He kind of took all of us young guys under his wing, and we just thought the world of him. Well, he was moving his family to California for work or something. I can't remember the whole story. And I mean, it was known that they were going to be leaving. And the Thursday night before they left, they were leaving for California. They were driving all their stuff out like that weekend. It was announced that he was appointed as a ministerial servant, which was great. We were so happy for him. And I want to say it was somewhere, in that same time frame. I don't know if it was after the circuit overseer's visit or before. I think it was after. One of the elders, who in fact happened to be another son of one of the elders that got removed, and I think this elder had been one of the boys involved in the wrongdoing all those years ago, comes up to me at the hall and said, in light of the circuit overseer's visit, he did the whole commend thing. Want to commend you on what a great job you're doing. And just want to let you know that when we were discussing, basically potential candidates for ministerial servants, quite frankly, I was 18 at the time, I think 19, somewhere in that neighborhood. Your name did come up, but something where they wanted me to increase my field service time. And I'll never forget, he told me if I could just spice that up a little bit. I thought that was a really weird choice of words. Spice it up. I mean, shouldn't I be doing this because I want to save souls? I'm out there knocking on doors to keep people from dying at Armageddon. But okay, fine. I might have been I think it was about 20, because I was getting close to getting married. I got married at 21. So, and my former wife, then girlfriend, and I think we maybe had even set a date somewhere in the interim. So I took his advice to heart and spiced up my field service time. So next circuit overseer's visit rolls around, and I think, I wasn't appointed. There was no appointment. Same elder approaches me again, and now I'm a few months out from getting married, and he does the whole thing again. Hey, just want to let you know, we've noticed what a great job you're doing. You've doing everything we've asked of you, and your name once again has come up, as to be considered to be a ministerial servant. But seeing as how you're getting married and you're going to be moving to, because I was leaving my home congregation, I was going to be attending my then wife's congregation. Seeing that you're going to be moving, we just figured we'd, just let that elder body make that recommendation. And I'm thinking, hold up here. So when it's your buddy that you play basketball with, and they were all the same age, you'll go ahead and make that recommendation for that guy, even though you knew he was going to be leaving the congregation. He was never going to serve as a ministerial servant in this congregation, but you'll recommend him. I'm in the same boat. Apparently, I am qualified to serve, and you don't make the appointment. You don't recommend the appointment. And by this point, my dad was an elder, and I was like, what's that about? Yeah, I know. Yeah, I said, why didn't you speak up and say something? Well, me being your father and everything, I didn't want it to appear like, nepotism. And I'm like, I don't think in this situation anybody would have thought that, because I did want to serve as a ministerial servant. And I thought that would have been, a nice parting gift for me. But did they deny me because of everything that had happened over the course of the last 10 years? I don't know. Or, I mean, it shouldn't have been a reflection on me, but it was just that the whole idea that, like I said, if it's one of their pals, they would go ahead and they would do that for him, but they didn't for me. And I thought that's not right. Because if you qualify, you qualify.
Right. Well, and I guess by that time your mom had left and everything. So
oh yeah, my dad was remarried, in fact.
What's that?
So my dad was in fact remarried.
Oh wow, okay. Because I was gonna say, like, you would think that in the face of that, you could have crumbled spiritually, as they would see it, or whatever.
Yeah.
And like that should have been a feather in your cap that you pressed on, you continued, you had been faithful, and now they're also going to have you go to a new congregation where you and I know you have to basically start all over, right? And so if you want to be a ministerial servant, you're now going to have to go over there and start from the bottom and work your way back up.
It's precisely what happened too, because yeah, had they just made the recommendation, I would have gotten the appointment. I would have moved there as a ministerial servant. The congregation I was going to desperately, and I mean desperately, needed help. They had just appointed two guys, basically my age at the time, as ministerial servants. They were both like 19 and 20, which was pretty young back then. That was very uncommon in the 80s and 90s. I mean, you had to be 25, 26 before they'd even consider you to be appointed, or to recommend you, I should say. But yeah, so I go to the congregation, it seems I've got the credentials. I mean, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. No, it was still like another 5 years before I got appointed as a ministerial servant, because their standards were just a little different. So yeah, to your point, absolutely. I'd start all over again.
Yeah, and they know what they're doing. And when they come up and they have this talk with you and all of that, and they're doing the whole compliment sandwich thing, and it's just there to make you feel some type of way so that they can keep you strung along. It's the carrot and the stick, right? And yep. If you were so much of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is who you know, and what your standing is based on that. If you're in with the in crowd or not. I take it, were you maybe not because of everything that had happened in the past? Was it hard for you to get in?
Well, no, I mean, was I in? No, I mean, not really. I mean, I was a young guy, like I said, 18, 19, 20, somewhere in that age range. The elders on the elder body, the cool elders, if you will, the ones that probably were the next turning the head, they were all, the late 20s, early 30s. And yeah, no, did I play basketball with these guys? Yeah. Was I, friendly with them? Yeah. It was I think our real connection, all of us younger guys, was the one fellow that they recommended to serve and got his appointment before he moved to California, because he was all the same age as they were. And we kind of were like his little posse, you know. We all liked to hang out with Bob. That was his name. But other than that, yeah, no, I wasn't going over and having dinner with the other elders, you know, and their families and things like that. Yeah, they were recommending their friends, you know, and that's, you know, and even though my dad was an elder, and there were other, excuse me, other elders in the body that were his age, I was irritated at my dad for not speaking up. I was like, why didn't you just say something? You know, what difference does it make? Well, you know, they gave me the whole nepotism bullshit, and I was just of the mind that, you know, you could have just stood up for me this one time. You know, what would it have hurt? You know, but he was trying to do the right thing, trying to play by the rules. So, I mean, I guess I have to credit him for that, if nothing else.
Good intent, but bad outcome. You know, well, I guess good outcome in the end. Maybe that would have sucked you in further to some degree.
Oh
and
yeah,
helped you to see yet again that there's something. You know, I felt it myself. Every time, and I was a servant at a point, but every time I got closer to, you know, the middle of the congregation, as they would say, right? Every time I rose in the ranks, or whatever term you want to use, like every time I started seeing the man behind the curtain a little bit more, it was always extremely disappointing.
Yeah.
and so I think that was part of what helped me to leave, was realizing that this thing is not what it purports to be at all.
Yes.
And I think that you were seeing that as you were seeing the inner workings of how people are really treated and why they're treated that way.
Yes, and I did want, after I became a ministerial servant, I did want, you know, I wanted to qualify to serve as an elder. I mean, there were even rules that I wasn't aware of right after I got appointed, because I'm like, you know, I'm ready to tackle some of these assignments. You know, I want to give public talks and all that. Somebody couldn't be the chairman at the meeting, and what was my buddy, a guy that was my age, he was one of my best friends at the time, and I said, well, I'll do it. You know, I was ready. You know, I was ready to take on some more stuff. So he said, well, I'll talk to I'll let the presiding overseer at the time know, you know, we can go tell him together. And so we did. And oh, I got a big fat no. No, you can't be chairman. I'm a ministerial servant. Why can't I be? Oh, well, you have to have given a public talk first, because if you're the chairman and the speaker doesn't show up, you've got to give the public talk. Like, where'd that come from? That's new. I didn't know that.
That's in the book of Matthew, chapter.
Yeah. And I was just like, again, that was one of those weird things.
Yeah.
Well, shortly thereafter, he did give me a public talk outline, and we got that ball rolling. And the elder body they were much older. I mean, these were guys, they were guys like 90 years old that was an elder on this body. And I mean, literally, they were like, man, we are tired and old. We are ready to hand this off to the next generation. Please qualify to serve as an elder, and quick, please. And there was a part of me that, obviously, at that point, I was fully indoctrinated. At that point, now I'm in it to win it. I've got some kids, you know, I'm raising them to my own detriment now to believe all this nonsense.
Sure.
But the more like I said, the older I got, and the more I thought about things, I was of the mind that I don't want to deal with people's problems like that. You know, I mean, it's one thing to be helpful. You know, I want to be there to give of myself to people, but I don't want to hear about some couple's like sexual problems or whatever's going on in their marriage. I don't want to have to do that. That's just not. And so I really kind of started to almost back off a little bit. Like, if I don't get as many hours in field service, they won't consider. You know, they won't maybe consider me. Didn't stop them though. They just kept piling more and more responsibilities on me. I was the territory servant. I was actually doing all the scheduling for like all the other assignments at the hall, carrying mics, yada yada yada. I was actually coordinating incoming and outgoing talks for Sundays. I'm pretty certain is an elder's responsibility. That was my job. I gave the local needs part one night as a ministerial servant.
Really? That's
Presiding
interesting.
officer called me up and said, "Yeah, so and so's not going to be at the meeting. I need you to give the local needs part. It's about such and such. Just research it. You'll be fine." And yeah, so I did it. And I remember coming off the platform, and one of the elders came up with this kind of little grin on his face. He was like, "How did that happen?" I said, "Brother so and so called me before the meeting and asked me to work this talk up, and he said you'll do fine. Just do it." So I did it. So it was almost like they were trying to deepen me into the thing, or some of them were. And yeah, I'm sure it was a great shock to them when everything kind of went to hell in a handbasket when it came to me, because I think they saw me as part of that next generation of elders. And
Well,
I,
and that's one of the reasons that they saw you, is that was because you were saying yes and you were doing what was asked of you.
yeah,
Sincerely, you cared, and you thought you were doing what was right. I was the same way. And if you're that person who will say yes, they will just keep piling things on you as the new workhorse until eventually your back breaks.
that's right.
That's what they do to people.
Yeah. And that's where I was already getting to that point. And it's funny because the two aforementioned gentlemen that were about my age, that had been appointed as ministerial servants at like 19 and 20, they both got appointed as elders. Yeah, well, I never was appointed as an elder, but they both. I mean, how did this go? Well, the one guy, the night that I got appointed as a ministerial servant, I found out 3 years later. We all found out 3 years later that some sort of fuckery had happened. We were going to our elders and servants meeting with the circuit overseer. We had the meeting, and the servants were dismissed. And the one guy, he's like, he kind of looks. His dad was an elder. His dad was presiding overseer. In fact, he was like, "Do I stay?" And his dad said, "You just stay." And I kind of looked around the room, and I was like, "Are we? Do you want us to stay? Are we supposed to stay there?" No. You guys you're dismissed. So me and the other servant that had gotten appointed as a servant along with this other guy, we all had plans to go out. We were going to have a couple beers after the meeting, because that's that's what we were going to do. We were scratching our heads. What's going on here? And what is he, a secret elder or something? What we didn't know what had taken place. Well, after their elders meeting wrapped up, he called Matt, is the guy's name, that the other servant. So apparently 3 years beforehand, when I had gotten appointed as a ministerial servant, he had gotten appointed as an elder. And the letter somehow never made it to the congregation. It got blamed on the former circuit overseer. They didn't think he thought that he should have been appointed or something. But yeah, when we got our new circuit overseer, and he was, I guess they always go over with the presiding overseer or whomever. So and so's an elder. What's he do? So and so. And when they got to this guy's name, they were like, "He's not an elder." Circuit overseer said he certainly is, and they kind of had a debate about it, and they were able to make a phone call or produce the letter or whatever it was, and he was immediately appointed as an elder on the spot, because he was an elder. He had been an elder and didn't know it. There's another. I mean, that's just maybe a paperwork fuck up or something. I don't know, but at the same time, it might just be another example of an injustice.
Jehovah's Holy Spirit can be interrupted by the U.S. Postal Service,
by the Postal Service, or somebody's opinion of somebody. Well, okay, I'm going to take this letter, and they're never going to know it. Which really and truly, this guy probably shouldn't have been appointed, because he just, I don't know, he was probably.
You can say that about a lot of people if you get into who they really are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's crazy. And then Matt, my friend, he, like I said, he went on to become an elder as well. And no sooner did he become an elder, his marriage started falling apart. And this is not a very pleasant story. I'll just cut it short. His wife, she apparently decided she didn't want to be a witness anymore, and then maybe she had fallen out of love with him. They were going to get a divorce, and he killed himself. He couldn't take the breakup. I mean, he was a very emotional guy anyway, and yeah, I really do blame it on being a Jehovah's Witness. You know, you think when you're part of that as long as you're doing everything the way you're supposed to do it, your life's going to be. I mean, you might have bumps on the road, but you know, Jehovah's always going to find a way for you, and he didn't find a way, and he couldn't deal with it, and he took his own life. And he's not the only. My father-in-law, my first father-in-law, took his own life 2 years after my first wife and I got married. Yeah, it's true.
There's unfortunately a lot of that inside the organization, and there's a lot of it. I haven't done the episode yet, but I'm going to do one about violence and Jehovah's Witnesses, and we think of violence as the the instances like there was the mass shooting in the Kingdom Hall in Germany a couple years ago.
Yeah.
There are, sometimes you'll hear about a Jehovah's Witness that runs off the rails and murders their family or something. Those are rare stories, but the most common form probably of violence is the violence against oneself that occurs when you have a lot of people who've really been told their whole lives that they're nothing and they don't value themselves and they're expendable, and that's what they're taught. And it's really, really, really sad. The expectations that they're given are not grounded in reality of themselves or of anyone else, and and there's no emotions are seen as a problem, so your emotions shouldn't be expressed or felt. It's just it's an emotional wasteland, and so many die in it, and it's really, really sad.
It is. Well, in my father-in-law's case, my former father-in-law, I should say, my ex-wife had an older sister. She was a year older. His family, my ex-father-in-law's family, lived in Lafayette, Indiana. So they would travel often to see family. And when the girls were 4 and 5, they were in Lafayette visiting. It was wintertime. Excuse me. Roads were icy and whatnot. Well, my ex-wife's older sister was a little devoted Jehovah's Witness, and she wanted to go home and go to their meeting at their Kingdom Hall. So they loaded up the car and started heading home. They had a Ford Pinto, hit a bad patch of ice on the way home, spun the car around and hit a guard. And this is back before kids wore seatbelts. And she was in the hatch coloring. And my wife, who was 4 at the time, started getting sick. So she went and sat in her mom's lap. Well, when the car spun, hit the guardrail, back of the car, hatch open, the sister flew out and like whacked her head on a rock. I mean, pretty much killed her instantly. It was, I mean, I know that's a depressing story for you, me, and your audience.
Well, sure. I mean, these are the realities of things that happen.
Yeah. I mean, there was a debate. They got her to the hospital. The hospital tried to give her blood. They wouldn't give her. I think they finally court ordered it, and she got blood anyway. It didn't matter. She ended up dying. But they literally even went to like the grandparents, and me being a grandfather myself now, that would. I mean, I can't imagine the position that put this poor guy in, having to say no. If her parents don't want her to have blood, then and he was a witness too. I can't authorize it either. I mean, and I think he even commented on how painful that was. So her father carried that his whole, and I don't think any of us realized how much he carried that guilt. He told one of his best friends. We found out after after we knew he was dead, because he was missing for 3 months. He just it's even a longer story that I'll try to keep somewhat truncated. He told one of his best friends, "I killed my daughter. You don't know what that's like. You don't know how that feels. Oh. I killed my daughter." Yeah. So, and just the way everything was handled, his wife couldn't. I mean, obviously, it's just, I can't imagine the trauma, losing your child.
Sure.
they literally, like, members of the congregation went in while they were making funeral arrangements at the hospital, went into their house, and this is fucked up as far as I'm concerned. Took the daughter's bed out, all of her clothes, repainted the room a different color, and reorganized it as if she had never existed. Because,
Wow.
yeah, because of the trauma, I mean, I think I don't know if they felt that that's what her mother would have, wanted, which it probably was. I mean, the whole time we were dating and married, there were never pictures of this little girl anywhere. Not nowhere at all. It wasn't until after her husband killed himself that she finally, I think, maybe came to some peace. I mean, he had pictures in his wallet. He showed me the pictures he had in his wallet. But to add insult to injury, so we were just starting to date when he, come to find out, had extreme depression. And I mean, it kind of made sense, obviously, with
Well,
everything.
yeah.
They got him on some depression meds, didn't work. Then they finally hit on something that did work, and he was doing much better. I think they changed his medicine back again, and he started to slip again. I didn't notice it, but my wife at the time did. He went to work on he went up to the assembly hall that we were talking about to do. They had an assignment to do some work. He went up there he'd retired. He had also just retired. He worked at Lily's, and they had offered retirement packages to people, early retirement. He was younger than I am now. He was like 50 or 51 at the time. So he had plenty of time on his hands. He was going to get a little part-time job or something, I think, because he didn't want to sit around the house. So he went up to the assembly hall to do some work, and he never came home. And I got home from work that it was Monday night. It was book study night, and my wife asked me if I'd heard from her dad. And why would I hear from you? We didn't have cell phones back then. Well, he didn't come home. Yeah, he didn't come home, and Mom's worried. I said, well, maybe he's going, because I think I was a little late. I said, let me drive. I think I drove up to the assembly hall. His car wasn't there. I drove to the Kingdom Hall to see if he'd gone to the meeting. I drove to a couple of the homes where book study was being handled. He wasn't there. Again, to try to cut it short, trying to find because I think he left his wallet. I think maybe he left his wallet at home. I'm not sure. I went over to my mother-in-law's and kind of looked around to see if there was anything that would give evidence of where he might be. And I found a note on, they had one of those big floor model TVs. And she
had the old ones. Yeah, the old.
She had like a lace thing. She had like the VCR, but she had some sort of lace drapery over the top of it, to make it look prettier than just the old wood grain.
Sure.
And I found a little piece of paper that had the name of a park, a local park. And I knew right then and there that he was gone. And I said, this is where he's at. And me and an elder from the congregation actually drove out there later that evening, and we found his car, which was terrifying. He wasn't in it. He wasn't in the trunk, but it was a pretty evident that,
sure,
unless he got murdered or something, he actually wrote a note. So it wasn't until 3 months later. And I don't know why the police didn't go crazy in that park trying to see if they could find evidence. It was some teenage joggers jogging through the park that found his body. But in the process, there were police involved, and there were local weirdos that were trying to get involved in the whole thing. And they said they'd seen him. In fact, my mother-in-law's brother-in-law, her sister's husband, he allegedly had somebody that was on the case, some cop he grew up with in Bloomington, Indiana. And they found him here, they found him there. And he'd been dead the whole time. But in the investigation, and I only recently found this out. I mean, I kind of had heard something about it. And I know, again, I'm probably going a little over on this story. There was strong evidence to suggest that he was gay on top of everything else. Yeah. That apparently the detective on the case, after all was said and done, told his brother, my father-in-law's brother, that they did find evidence of homosexual activity. Now, I assume maybe he was bisexual. And it's neither here nor there to me. I mean, people are people, and that, that's who you are, that's who you are. But you compound your feeling responsible for your daughter's death with this huge secret that, oh, you think it's bad enough being a Jehovah's Witness and being a weirdo growing up that way? Oh yeah, add being gay on top of that. Now you got to feel like you're from another planet. And
yeah, because you can't be gay and serve Jehovah.
No. And to carry those burdens for years and years, it's a wonder he lasted as long as he did.
Yeah, it's really sad. He may have had all of that going on internally before he ever lost his daughter. And,
yes.
Again, there's just so many. And I think that's one of the things about all of the stories on this podcast is that there's so much that's going on behind the scenes in families that people may look up to or even aspire to be in the congregation, and they have no idea who anybody really is.
Yeah.
Because nobody who's in there really knows who they are. They've never been allowed to explore that. They were given a personality. They were given an identity. They haven't had a chance to truly get out and figure out who they are. And even when they do know, sometimes, unfortunately for individuals, it's something that they know is just not acceptable to this thing that dominates their entire life.
Yeah.
So they feel they have no way out, and it's really, really sad.
It is, and I would venture a guess that all of us really have that. There's always that one thing. There's always that one thing about us that we know if we were to act out on this, or if we were to let people know we were acting out on this, whatever it is, and it doesn't necessarily have to be anything, like being gay or even anything sexual, but this would get me in a lot of trouble if people knew that I liked this. If whether it's rated R movies or it's whatever it is.
I like rap music. I wasn't supposed to like rap music.
Oh yeah, what is wrong with you? That's you can't. No, you can't like
yeah, or just you're sitting there in a meeting and you're hearing things that don't add up to you, and you can't say that. You can't let anybody know.
No. Well, and I'll tell you, and you'll probably laugh, and anybody who in future watches this video, I hope they do get a chuckle out of it, because even I do. Now, the one thing, in light of all the things that I've already enumerated, the injustices that I saw, the favoritism, the poor treatment, the one thing that the first thing that made me go, okay, this just might be bullshit right here, all of this, was, when was it? It would have been about 2007 or 8, with the internet becoming widely accessible. People have got to be, I don't even think people quite still had smartphones like they do now, but everybody had a computer, everybody was online. There still wasn't any Facebook and YouTube and all of that. I don't think, if there was, it was in its infancy. I think there was YouTube, because I think I used to listen to music on YouTube. I used to play videos for my girls. But Watchtower kept featuring article after article after article after article. Sometimes it was on the cover. Sometimes it was in an article, a study article. The dangers of internet pornography. The dangers of internet pornography. The dangers of, even if something pops up on your screen, you got to get rid of it. It's bad. It's terrible. It's bad. You can't do. And I just thought, man, this is overkill. And it's not like, I don't know about you, but I'm sure there were some of us, I'm guilty as charged.
Sure.
I didn't look at some, how can you not? It's free,
Sure.
you could find it anywhere. But when it came in, I think I heard a couple of the women at the Kingdom Hall one day, because I hadn't read the article, mention that the latest study article in the Watchtower, it was when they basically outlawed viewing pornography. They made it a disfellowshipping offense. And I thought, now there's nothing in the Bible that even remotely would qualify as pornography. There's no edict on pornography, because there wasn't really pornography back then. Yeah, there were probably drawings,
Is that when they started having the talks about pornea?
Pornea had been around for. They used that.
Is that when they added that to pornea? I don't know. They were always.
Yeah, they called it. They qualified it. Let's see here. Because uncleanness, I don't think you could get disfellowshipped for. There were unclean habits. I think that was a little smack on the wrist. If it was loose conduct, that was a disfellowshipping offense. They called it. No, I'll take that back. This is how they categorized it. They categorized viewing porn as uncleanness with greediness. I think is how that was the disfellowshipping category that it went. That's the new umbrella that it went under. And there were grades to it. If you were watching male, female, regular, vanilla, just two people copulating, you're going to get a talking to, a naughty boy. If there was anything remotely homosexual or what they even considered a homosexual act, now you're getting into some depraved shit there. And now you're going to get punished.
Yep.
And I thought this is nonsense. They can't do that. They can't. There's nothing in the Bible that.
Well, they can do anything they want, as we've seen. But yes, you're right.
But that was one of the first things that made me go, okay, something. What else is going on? And then not too many years after, but a couple of years after, when I finally I allowed myself the free when I was making my exit, and I allowed myself the freedom to truly see who the man behind the curtain was, if there was one. Because I was riddled with guilt. What if they're right? There was a lot that I didn't 100% agree with, but as we probably all go, well, maybe you didn't go through this as much as I did, or maybe you did. What if they are right? What if they are the closest thing to the truth, even if they don't have the truth or whatever? And one of the first thing, I think it was, I don't know if it was an article I read or it was a video I found on YouTube. Really, there wasn't anybody doing any videos back then, I don't think. Or if there were very few and far between. Was finding out about the fact that we were NGO members of the United Nations as an organization for 10 years. The very thing that would have gotten you disfellowshipped, we all were that thing. And then when it got uncut, when it got revealed, they we just did it for a library card.
And they immediately renounced it or disavowed it or whatever and stopped doing it.
Tried to. And of course, the whole thinking was, you didn't need to become, because they had to sign documentation saying that they would support the United Nations
and its aims.
And they did. From what like I said, I wasn't paying that close of attention during that time period to notice whether they were or they weren't knocking the United Nations if they had been. But apparently they didn't. They had lessened what they were saying about them. But we just wanted to get a library card so that we could expose them more or whatever. And I guess what came out of that was you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to sign these documents. They've got satellite libraries where you could go and look, anything you need to look up. You don't even need, don't need to become an NGO to do that. And then the United Nations told them, "Oh, that's how you feel about us? Yeah, we don't want you to be part of our trip anyway. So we're going to go ahead and cancel your subscription." But I was like, those lying sacks of shit. This is what I don't have words now to describe the anger I felt.
Sure, it's a betrayal.
You
can't join the YMCA because that's the Young Men's Christian Athletic Christian Association, and that would be associating with false religion. But yet they could join and be this NGO of the United Nations, a group that they condemned as one of the wild beasts in Revelation, and was this horrible thing, and yet they joined that, and then we don't know why they really were a part of it. But
well, and I've since learned, maybe even in that same time frame, they're still tied in some ways to the United Nations. I don't know what those ways are, but there was somebody produced some sort of documentation that showed that they do still have some sort of a connection to the United Nations. Which that doesn't surprise me in the least. And that's even I've seen some things on their stock portfolio because they're and is it true? Is it false? I don't know that they've got stock in Philip Morris. They've got
stock in Rand Cam, which makes engines for war and things like that. Yeah.
And I think one of the more ridiculous claims was that the fact that they've got Philip Morris stock, that somehow that's related to Tony Morris because his family's part of that. I'm like, oh, I don't know that I buy it.
I don't
I don't know
know.
that I buy into that.
Maybe, but
I mean, if I heard it, you know what? Nothing would surprise you. Could tell me the guy was a woman, it wouldn't surprise me. You know.
Sure. But isn't it? It's interesting, that Watchtower pushed the poor brothers and sisters in Malawi to die horrible deaths because they wouldn't allow them to buy a stupid party card for a political thing.
But the Mexico those brothers
and sisters were brutally attacked and murdered. But yet the organization's like, a political card with the United Nations. Yeah, let's sign me up. They don't care about people.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's something I never made a connection on, and I'm glad that you did, because that's.
They don't care about people.
They don't
care about themselves.
They do. And we know that that's really the reason why these changes are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Is they're hemorrhaging people, and they've got to stop the bleeding, because it won't be long before they've dwindled down to nothing. Well, and again, the same source that I mentioned earlier that mentioned this 10-year plan that they may or may not have in place. Apparently, his insider gave him some more information, because this is supposed to be taking place between now and 2034, if any of it's true. And I mean, like I said, there's some things that what they've just done could be them dipping their toe in the water if it's true.
Sure.
But I guess this guy said that we all know about the Jesus movies that are coming out that they've got for the convention. Apparently, the next movie they're going to have, he indicated it was coming out in 2034. I don't know why so long, but it's going to be a full-length feature film on the Book of Acts. And they're hoping by that point they will have already reorganized congregations to meet, to more be modeled after first century Christians, which would indicate they're going to be meeting in homes again. And allegedly they're going to discontinue using the name Jehovah's Witnesses by that time, which
I can see that.
I could see it. I mean, is this any of this based in fact? I don't know. But
again, I mean, look, I can go on to any of these ex-JW sites right now and say anything too. Okay. We don't know who any of these people are, but so I don't put any stock in it. But I mean, any of the ideas that were espoused, I've seen it as well. They're not necessarily new ideas. I mean, the Mormons don't like being called the Mormons anymore. They're trying to push that name away. Any narcissist is very appearance focused, and Jehovah's Witnesses, that name carries a negative connotation in this world. So yeah, I can totally see. I mean, they're already they've got the organization, their legal entity, the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Always found that bizarre. Always found that weird.
And now it's the Christian Life and Christian Life and Ministry meeting during the week. I think they're trying to rebrand, like they're just harmless Christians, and that way they can hide the deepest, darkest parts underneath that veil. But who knows where it will take off? I don't know.
I do think that you will. I think if these things do happen, I think that could be a catalyst to wake people up. They might be like, wait a minute.
I don't know, man. 1975 happened, and they grew and grew and grew from there. So
that's true.
It's like true. If you're in a cult, and it's momentum, right? Like right now, I could see them easily in the next 6 months having another thing that they want to float out there, because they're getting the brothers and sisters excited. Momentum breeds momentum. If I can get you to take step 1, step 2, and step 3, you will much more easily take step 4, 5, and 6 without questioning, because I've got you moving in the direction I want you to move.
That's right.
So, I mean, that's how you bring people into the organization to begin with, by getting them to start to distance themselves from family, maybe stop celebrating a holiday, and maybe start coming to the Kingdom Hall. it's death by 1,000 cuts, and that's what it will be for any changes they make as well.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
how
That
you
is,
manipulate people.
that it is, and I do believe you're right. I do believe it sounds like it almost sounds like, again, if any of it's true, they're regressing back to the point when are they going to call themselves Bible students again? Well, hell, there are other Bible student groups out there. They still follow Charles Taze Russell's
Yeah, the
teachings.
OGs still exist.
Hell yeah, they do. Now, will they join up? Will they join forces with him? No, of course they won't. But it does. It almost does appear that they are trying to almost, like you said, make themselves just nominal Christians. Like I said, maybe they
Yeah.
will. Maybe they will stop this fellowshipping. Maybe they will, if they can. If they can get it back there, but retain their membership. What are they lost? Nothing. They've got everything that they want. They're still getting that money. They'll if they're going to try to start moving people into like homes, like the book study arrangement again, which is how the first century did their thing.
They can do it from Zoom and have you do it in your own home. They don't need to meet
So much
together.
real estate they can sell. I mean, they're already selling stuff off. Now they've got even more. Yeah, Zoom meetings. That's a thing now, thanks to the pandemic. I'll never forget when they changed the format of the meeting. That was right after JW.org, or right before, one of the two, before they started doing their broadcast, their televangelism. And my daughter, who was at the time, she was physically and mentally out, she was like, "Yeah, they've changed the format of the meeting." I said, "Yeah, I heard. Yeah, we got this little brochure now that we have." I said, "Bring me that brochure. I want to have a look at that." So she did, and I was like, "Christian life and ministry? What? That's what they're calling this meeting?" She was like, "Yeah." And I said, "This sounds like any other church. It doesn't. This isn't Jehovah's Witnesses. This doesn't sound anything like them, because it's not."
It's not. No, they've changed
Yeah.
greatly. I mean, it's just with any corporate structure, with any business, if the business is losing money or losing customers, you adapt to do what you need to do, and you would never tip your hand and make all the changes you could possibly make at once. You make them slowly over time to see what works. You push on buttons and see what the reaction is, and I think that's all they're doing, and they're just trying to save their business.
Yes, they are, because that's at its core. That's what it's all about. I know my wife and I were talking the other night about how when I think it was 1990 when I remember the announcement, we are no longer going to be requiring payment for our literature. We're going to go to the donation arrangement. Isn't this a wonderful, loving provision from Jehovah? And everybody went, "Yep, it sure is," not realizing that just a couple of years before that, the Jimmy Swaggarts of the world, the thing that happened with Jim Baker, was shining a huge light on the tax exempt status of religions, or the nonprofit, or whatever you
Can't
want to
sell
call it.
products without paying sales tax.
That's right. And whoops, yeah, they backed that right out. And that's the real, this again, more of your whole Jehovah's directing this organization by his Holy Spirit. No, corporate greed is directing what's going on here. And like I keep saying, and I'm sure you do too, how the average person can't. Well, I know how they can't see it. We all know how they can't.
We were all blind at one point.
We're all there. Yeah, we were there too. I mean,
once you can see it, though, it's so clear and so obvious that it's hard not to see.
Yeah. And you hear people talking about how to approach a witness, or how to try to help them, like how to help unindoctrinate them or whatever, and go into their throat with this kind of stuff. That's just not the.
Just go bang your head on a wall. It's more effective.
It's not the way. Yeah. Well, in 1914, blah, blah, 607, that's not real. Mexico, Malawi, whatever it is. Like, I mean, I think if I were to say something to a witness, if they were, if I had that conversation, whether it be a family member or somebody I used to know, I think the only thing I would say is maybe you should just research what Jehovah's Witnesses have taught over the years. Just go back and see what their teachings were, and see the changes that are made, and make a decision for yourself based on that. Because I think you're going to find that the things that you've been being told might not add up with what was really being taught. But may just be me. I don't know. Because trying to like browbeat somebody, and it's like them trying to browbeat us to come back to the.
Well, I mean,
religion.
Jehovah's Witnesses spend billions of hours going to people's doors every year and make very few converts. The growth is from within and from producing children for the most part. And
Mhm.
if someone's not raising their hand and asking a question, then chances are they're not interested in the answer. So you
Yeah.
can give them the answer all day long, but if they're not showing that they're open to it, it doesn't matter. It's vanity. There's nothing to be gained there.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of us had to see it on our own when the time was right.
Yeah.
You've mentioned some things that you saw. Can I ask, so what was your eventual path out? What was it? What was the straw that broke the camel's back, or was it just a continuation of many, many straws that eventually led to you saying, you know what? Because that's kind of what it usually is. It's not
Yeah.
usually just one thing, which is why you can't just wake someone up, because you can't know all the buttons that need to be pressed on the secret combination of numbers there.
That's true. For me, I mean, while I had doubts, like I said, and while I had seen changes, as I mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, about like, okay, now this particular thing is something you can be dealt with judicially for. And then there were other things that I didn't even realize till later, that I was like, wow, that's
Yeah.
even having certain types of phone conversations with people. Oh yeah, you can, even though nobody's touching anybody's private parts, that's still a
Mhm.
disfellowship offense. Again, just the making of rules where there was no need to make a rule. I saw those things, but I mean, in my case, just to be completely straightforward, I mean, my wife and my marriage was not in a good place
Mhm.
for many reasons,
Sure.
and I stepped out of that arrangement, which I'm not proud to say that I did. I wish I would have handled things differently.
Sure.
But once I did it, it was almost like I almost, I think, felt like I had to do that, or I would have never left. I just don't think that
So
I
are you
would have.
saying that you stepped out of the marriage
Yes.
and out of the organization kind of simultaneously?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
and to be quite honest, Greg, and I've interviewed a lot of people, and of course, in my coaching practice, I work with roughly 6 ex-JWs witnesses a day, so I work with a lot of people to help them heal. But there's a lot of people. I mean, what is the way out of a marriage for one of Jehovah's Witnesses? There's only one way
One.
ultimately that satisfies what it needs to be. And just like Jehovah's Witnesses create a self-fulfilling prophecy to some degree by telling, let's say, young people that if you leave, out there in the world is this like wild and crazy place of drugs and sex and rock and roll, right? And
Yes, sir.
so a lot of the young witnesses who leave, they think that when they leave, they have to go hog wild and do all of these things because they think that's who they're supposed to be. They've been told their whole lives that absence of the witnesses, that's who they would be. And so there's a lot of people who end up, the dissolution of their marriage is often going to be, stepping out of that marriage physically in some way. That's just the way we were always told it had to be. And honestly, it
Yeah.
is the way it has to be in order to set that other person free
Agree. Yeah.
in their stupid religion. So
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but I knew people that their marriages failed and they got a divorce, and there was so much hatred and animosity that one of the former marriage mates was like, I'll be goddamned if I ever let this guy
Oh
get his.
yeah.
Years will go by. You are talking about being stuck in purgatory. You're just
Yeah,
live
I
with
will
it, buddy.
never let you move on to another
Yep.
relationship because I'm never going to own up to doing it myself. So,
Yep.
you know,
That's
you
true.
could really keep a person stuck forever by doing that. And that's pretty cruel too.
Very much so.
It's sad.
It is. And in my case, I really think that my now former wife would have, I think she wanted me to see the error of my ways, maybe sow my wild oats, realize that I'd screwed things up and come back. And I couldn't, because I was like, that's a level of control I will not ever put myself in. Because if I thought it was bad, the 38 years that I was a fully indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness, how much worse is it going to be if I tuck my tail between my legs? I return to my marriage. I return to the organization. I take a beating for that. I'm going to be taking a beating for the rest of my life in this marriage. And I'm sorry. I can't do that.
Yeah.
That's, I'd be the next person putting a pistol in my mouth.
I get it. I totally get it.
Just couldn't,
No way to live. So you escaped in that way. What now, and then that's somewhat behavioral. What helped you to also understand what was your path out mentally, to you had seen certain things, but then once you did that kind of make you feel like you had the freedom to start investigating what Jehovah's Witnesses really are?
It certainly did. It certainly did. And again, this was before I think folks like you were doing these kinds of programs on social media or on YouTube. There were some websites you could go to, and I think, like I had mentioned earlier, I'd gone on some sort of a message board or something before I ever left, and I saw some, Jehovah's Witnesses got the date 607 wrong, and I, in my cognitive dissonance, I was able to go, bullshit, I don't believe that. But yeah, once these things had happened, and like I said, there was that part of me was like, God, but what if they're right? And a friend of mine, well, the guy I told you about that we got baptized around the same time. He did end up becoming one of my best friends, even though he's really kind of a douchebag. We don't speak anymore. He didn't even live in the state, and he always was one. That's why I didn't want to be friends with him in the first place. But I digress. I remember going to his house when all this was first starting to happen. I was upset, crying the whole 9 yards, and he'd been living his best life for a while. Him and his wife had gotten a divorce. He was out there doing whatever he was doing, and I still don't even know what that was. But I remember to ask. We watched the movie Religious together. He was like, you need to watch this," and that in and of itself was eye opening. But I remember asking him what I think I just said. But what if they're right? What if they're right? And I'll never forget what he said to me, and it stuck with me. And it's one of the most profound things I think the guy ever said. He was like, "Then you die. You're going to die anyway." And when he said that, it was like, it's the simplest thing that anybody else in the world knows. I mean, yes, nominal Christians have the hope of going to heaven and all that jazz, but as a Jehovah's Witness, when you hear those words for the first time and they sink in, it's an eye opener. It was like, I never thought of it that way. You're right. We're everything that lives dies, and we are among the things that are going to die. It doesn't matter whether there's a paradise earth coming or not. We're still going to die. But yeah, there's much more evidence to prove that that's what's going to happen rather than the other thing. And I've often said this too, that at the crux of it, and this really goes for anybody who's especially Christian, but especially Jehovah's Witnesses, I think that's the real reason why they are. I mean, other than a lot of them are just dicks, they're just they like you said, the religion combined with their own bad personality, their bad traits, really makes them evil people. But for the most part, why is it that they're willing to see you, their brother, their son, their uncle, whatever, admire and just walk right past you until last Friday? It's because they don't want to die. That's all it comes down to. This is about self-preservation. All of it is about self-preservation. And they think that if they do that to you, while they think that's an act of love, the love they're showing is right here for themselves, because they think that's going to keep them living.
Yeah, they just want to save their own ass. That's all this has ever been. They are terrified of their God, and they're terrified of death, and they want to live forever, and they want to see dead loved ones. So just do what you got to do to save your own soul so that you can get the promised reward. That's all that matters.
Yeah. But fuck that guy, because whatever. And I've had this discussions with people, again, like in Facebook groups and stuff, about things of this nature, and I'm trying to think of precisely what I think I kind of lost my train of thought. Well, the whole idea of, like, in the new system of things, the Bible says something about that their remembrance will be forgotten. And I've said that before. Then why does it matter? I mean, they're going to forget us anyway. We're not going to, we a couple hundred years into that thing, they're not. Greg, who was? I don't know that. I don't know that guy.
The sad thing is they're going to be okay forgetting us.
Yes, yeah, and then there's that.
How inhuman that a mom would be okay forgetting their kids. Just like back in the Job story, the way Jehovah's Witnesses interpret that, and they're like, well, I mean, yeah, Job lost all his kids and everything, but he got more later. It's like, I lost this pen the other day, but I mean, I went to Walmart and I bought another pack of pens, and it was like, I never missed anything. Like humans are just objects that people come and go. Don't really get too attached to them, and then you won't have to worry about them later. And that gets to the whole, like, with this whole shunning thing and everything. We as ex-witnesses, we focus on the detachment that occurs, but what we're missing is, talk about this a lot in my practice, is that what we're missing is that there was never an attachment.
Right.
That we were taught to keep everyone at arm's length. There is the attachment style for Jehovah's Witnesses is horrible. It's extremely avoidant. It's extremely anxious. It is not secure at all. And they're just able to cut people off like they never mattered and they never existed, because the only person who truly matters or exists is themselves. It's a very narcissistic cult. It's all about saving themselves. And if you don't look, think, and act like them, then be gone.
Yeah. I was lucky, though. I think when it came to my father, he was about the attachment. He was about family. There was a lot of love there. Yes, and I'm grateful for that. There was a lot of love between. I was the youngest. I was the baby, so I'm going to get some special attention, I guess. But I did have a very, very close relationship with my father. My brother did too. My sisters didn't get quite as much of it, but they did get it, and we all knew our father well. He's been dead now for 20 years. I was obviously still fully indoctrinated ministerial servant at the time, and all that jazz. But I've often said that, because me and my dad talked about other things, non-Jehovah's Witness related, where he had a viewpoint on, like, politics that I didn't know he had. And I mentioned that my uncle had been Justice of the Peace. One of their other brothers went on to be township assessor in Jeffersonville. Big scandal, almost went to prison, died before it happened. Thank goodness for him. But he had some pretty strongly entrenched political views that I didn't think he should have, even though I had my own too. Being Jehovah's Witnesses, you're not supposed to have those. But when I was like, yeah, but Dad, think about this or that, and I recommended, like, somebody's radio program or something, you should listen to this program, see what you think. He was like, yeah, I've been listening to that, and wow, I mean, you were right. I didn't realize that, some of the things that I thought weren't what they really were. And I've used that since then to say, I sincerely believe this, and I might be wrong, but if my father were alive today, if he had been alive in 2009 when I left, A, I don't think he would have shunned me, not hard. And B, I think if once I had done my research and I had seen, here's why this is wrong, Here's why that's wrong. Here's why. Just looking at the inner workings of you. I mean, I know you've read Crisis of Conscience. Most of us have, and In Search of Christian Freedom. I regularly listen to them on Spotify because those books are so fascinating. They literally are like the one of the greatest deprogramming tools, that are out there. If I could have shared those things with him, I'm willing to wager money that he would have said, "Wow, I never knew that. I never realized that," and it might have changed. It might have changed his mind. I think it's quite possible it would have changed his mind. He might have stayed a witness, but I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have hardcore shunned me. And maybe I'm just being a narcissist by saying that. But
who knows?
I mean, yeah, I just, but like, again, like I go back to, other family members. My brother, he was an elder for years. He's also got that's something else about Jehovah's Witnesses. A lot of depression and anxiety, lots of it. My brother has it. I think both my other two sisters have it. I got one sister I don't talk to. I've just fellowshipped her, but she's not even a Jehovah's Witness. She's just a piece of shit. Long story, but yeah. My sister, my brother, their spouses, my sister's husband was an elder. They're, like I said, they're completely sanctimonious, self-righteous people.
Sure.
I've seen them in public. Like I mentioned earlier, I walk right past you at the grocery store like you don't exist. Yeah, there's the example of the attachment versus detachment thing. I mean, yeah. I was very close, in particular, to my sister. I mean, she was the youngest besides me. We had a very close bond, but I thought until this happened. And I mean, that's the thing about it. It's like when you leave, we all consciously know I'm going to be shunned, but it's almost like the number one contender, in the boxing world. They think they've got what it takes to take on the champ. And we'll say it's Mike Tyson. I've heard this analogy used before. Yeah, you think you got what it takes. You're full of piss and vinegar until he smacks you in the face one time with that little big paws he has, and then you realize who the fuck you're in the ring with. And that's what it's like the first time you encounter somebody that you love after you've left, and they just walk right past you. It's like getting punched in the face, and that's when you start realizing
it's real.
What you said there, it's real, and that attachment that I thought we had also wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't real. And could I have that attachment with this person again? With a lot of work, yes. Especially if I go back to what I said earlier. If you can come to me with an apology, if you can come to me and say, I was a piece of shit person to you for what I did, I believed a lie. It's in Crisis of Conscience. I was a follower of followers, didn't know any better. It doesn't excuse my shitty behavior towards you, and I'm sorry. And I would like to try to pick up the pieces and rebuild.
I'm sorry, and I've changed.
And I've changed, yes, and I've changed.
Apologies are easy. Action is where the rubber meets the road.
That's right. You're right, and I've changed. That is the key. And I actually think I said that to somebody recently about the whole thing, because somebody made some comment about how this doesn't mean anything and what good does any of this do us, them lessening their, the restrictions on talking to people like us. And I said, well, it doesn't. I mean, like for us, it doesn't. It's a big change for them, but it really doesn't mean anything unless what we just said is what takes place.
Yeah.
And if that can't take place, then like words are empty.
Yeah, lip service is easy to give to something. Actually changing who you are, your actions, the way you see your worldview, it's a very difficult thing to do, and most people will never do it. And so that's why most of us are never going to have a lot of what we really want, because the people that we want it from really just don't have it to give. They can't give it because they don't have it. And so, perhaps someday they can find it. That's up to them. That's their journey. And if they're willing to put in the really hard work to do that, but a lot of people just aren't, which is sad.
Yeah.
So you've put in work into your own life. So what are the things that, like, So you've been out now for how long?
15 years officially. I really started, I guess you could, even though I was a ministerial servant with tons of responsibilities, probably about 2007, I really started
Okay.
kind of going down the path my mom did. I had to work late and I missed meetings.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still stayed as active as I could, but, like I said, the family life wasn't doing real well either. And yeah. So it's still, but I officially canceled my subscription to the Resurrection in 2012. So it's
Okay.
actually been 12 years that I actually been fully and completely out. But for the 3 years before that, that's when I was being hunted like a dog by the local elder body. Phone calls, coming to wherever I lived. Somehow they always found out where I lived and they'd come knocking on my door, even if I wasn't in their territory.
Oh
So
yeah. They will pursue, won't they?
yes, indeed. So yeah,
So
that's when I left. And you had a question about that, so I'm ready.
yeah. So you've been out for 15 years. So
Yeah.
what do you like about life after Jehovah's Witnesses? What are the things that you have today in your world that more accurately reflects who Greg is? What do what's your life like today?
Well, um, I mean, I think it's the most obvious and simple answer would be say everything. I love everything about my life now. I mean, it's a totally different life, and you can even boil it down to simple things like I don't have to get dressed and ready to go to a meeting 3 times a week. I don't have to do a bunch of preparation. I don't have to do extra preparation to give, talks or assignments. I mean, I was used very extensively given public talks as a ministerial servant. I was once, twice a month going out
Ugh.
giving talks. I don't have that pressure. That's nice. Yeah, I've got people in my life that I love and love me back for who I am. And I've often said this. I didn't change. I was always this person. I mean, I couldn't always let the whole me out because you weren't allowed to, and I can now. And that's it's like the I said about the toothpaste being out of the tube, man. There ain't no way nobody's going to put that back in that tube. I won't. I will never let that happen. I wouldn't trade what I've got now for anything. I've still got. It's weird because they often say, and they use a Bible verse about how when you leave the world, you're going to give up mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and blah, 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 but you're going to get mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and all
Mhm.
these things back. Well, I have experienced that on this side where I never really felt I had it on that side. And the best example I can give is so after my marriage collapsed, I had a girlfriend. Um, we had a baby together. That child is 14 years old now. Um, my my middle daughter left the organization, though she never got baptized. All my kids, when they got to a certain age, they decided to shun me because this is the right thing to do. And like I said, I didn't handle things very well when we went our separate ways. I mean, I was had my own thing going on, and I felt guilt. And my ex-wife was also incredibly controlling about when I got to see the kids, where I got to see the kids, who they could be around. Couldn't have them over for an overnight visits. It was terrible. And that's something that they say about when you leave, that your life's going to turn to a big bucket of shit when you leave. And mine did. I mean, literally for probably the first 10 years.
Well, they facilitate that.
Yes. Yeah. And, there was some vindictive things that went on. And like I said, I blame myself for the role that I played in it. But I mean, I had financial woes for a decade almost because of all of this. So it almost seemed to be that self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, that, oh, well, yep, this is Satan, man. He's pounded me in the ass really good on this thing, because I now don't have God's spirit anymore. I knew that wasn't the case, but it finally turned around. Me and Nicole reconnected, and that's where there was a real. I mean, I had a girlfriend for about 5-6 years, and she was just not the same one who's my son's mother. We've got a great relationship, but our romantic relationship didn't work out. So I had somebody that basically held me down for another 5 years, but in different ways. That came to an end. We ended up re-meeting, I should say, and she's stubborn as hell. I mean, and she's loving, and she saw what was going on, and we were able to work together to get things turned around. And yeah, that's why, I'm living the life that I'm living. We're living this life together. But when it comes to like getting back the things that you lost, I kind of got sidetracked. Like I said, my middle daughter, finally, she was about 15, clandestinely got a hold of me and said, I want to see you. I never really wanted to be here. I wanted to be with you because we were especially close, and we still are. And when I first got her for a visit, I mean, I left in her ball in her court. I said, look, I don't know what's up with you and the Jehovah's Witness thing, but if that's what you want, I'm not, if you just want to see me and you want to still be a witness, I got it. But where are you at? If you don't mind me asking. She's like, yeah, I don't like this. I don't want any part of it. I'm like, okay, good, great. Okay, now we can start helping. I can start helping you understand why. I said, the first step, do not get baptized. If you get baptized, you're going to screw yourself with your mom and your brother and your sister, because then you're going to get disfellowshipped and they'll treat you like they treat me. And she took my advice, and that's worked out very well. So I got my daughter back. So I've got my youngest son, and Nicole's got a daughter as well. And it's strange because her daughter has the exact same name my other daughter, and they're both named Madison Page. So the Job thing, and the pen example, well, that is true. You can't replace people.
Mm-hmm.
I can't replace my daughter and my son, and I want them back. And that's why I keep my eye on what's going on in this organization, because I hope above all hope that something somewhere is going to change. Whether they say, hey, you can start talking to people again, maybe that'll give me an opportunity to help get them out, or maybe they'll see something on their own. But my point is, I've got my two daughters and son, essentially, now that I've got my youngest son, Jennifer, my daughter, and then Madison, my stepdaughter. I mean, I love her like a daughter. Yeah, I lost them, and I still want them back. But
of course,
but
you can still have great appreciation for what you have.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the family that's my family that's going to be attending my daughter's wedding. And that's part of why I said I want to put a thumb in their eye. I mean, that's not why I'm going to the wedding. It's my daughter, and I want to see her get married. But I want my extended family to see, no, you can be successful and have a good life and not be a Jehovah's Witness, regardless of what you think. It is possible. Yeah, it takes some work, because the first thing you got to do is unlearn all the bullshit that was put into your head. In my case, from the time I was born, you guys at least got Christmases, and birthdays, and got to be in Boy Scouts and played Little League, and go to prom. Even as Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s, they got to go to prom. I never got that. You got to have a taste of all that stuff. Gave it up. I've had all this. I had all this that I had to untangle, get out of my head. That's the first step, and then once you're free of that, you can do anything, and you can move on, and you can be happy. And if you guys don't want to be a part of it, that's your loss. But I'm never going to join. I'm never going to join your club again.
I don't have to be perpetually unhappy just because I left this thing.
Yeah.
In fact, it's what would maybe facilitate actual happiness instead of the fakery that Jehovah's Witnesses put on while they're all anxious and depressed, just waiting for the end of this old wicked system of things so that they can finally be happy. You can be happy today. You don't have to wait till there doesn't need to be a destruction of an entire world and everyone on it.
99.9% of people
in order for you to be happy. And if that's what it takes, then you've got some messed up priorities. So, whatever. But I'm glad that you today have found freedom. You have found some happiness in your life. You've got family, chosen family around you as well, and I'm glad that you get to move forward with that as the underpinning of your life instead of just all the negativity, all the depression and everything of Jehovah's Witnesses. You can move on and make your own choices in life and have the things you want.
Yeah.
Gets to be
Yeah.
dregs. So
Yes.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being open and willing to share your own story so that other people can see that there's life after Watchtower, and there are just lots of different ways of seeing things, and we can all just move on to be whoever we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point there, I feel the same way. I'm sure my story is not unique other than it's unique to me.
Sure.
I'm sure others have had shared experiences, in their, time as part of that cult. But yeah, my sincerest hope is that, somebody can do exactly what you said and take something away from my experience
Mhm.
that will maybe help them see, yeah, I can do the same thing. I mean, I don't, why am I worried about what they think? Or why do I feel like maybe I should go to the memorial or start going back to meetings again? I don't need that to be happy. It is, again, the attachment versus detachment thing. When maybe that will help some people realize there really wasn't what that was. That wasn't real. That was literally a fairy tale
Yep.
that you were living. And now this is what's real and this is what matters. And there are people like me that are living proof that you will be happy if you just allow yourself to be. And part of that is untangling everything that you were, from that religion. And you'll either discover the real you or you'll realize the real you was always there. It was just shrouded in all of that. And at that point, you can full speed ahead, move on with your life, and find all the happiness that you desire.